This is the strange story of how, with the reorganization of their local school, the students took pride in the new, larger building, as well as how the resident 7 school mysteries also grew by 1. The tale of how Takeshi Nonomiya got his hands on a camera begins many years ago with an incident that happened in the science prep room. This week, his group had the duty of cleaning the science lab and a science prep room. The science prep room was by far the more interesting of the two, as it was full of strange things, and because of that, it was popular among the students. That day, he had earned the right to clean the science prep room after winning a round of rock, paper, scissors. There were a few students who did the cleaning diligently, but there were also many who just used the time to goof off. That day as well, there was a group of girls skipping and chasing each other around all through the lab, science prep room, and even out into the hallways. By chance, at that time, he was all by himself. He had finished sweeping, and was flustered to notice that he was the only one still cleaning, so he was about to go call for some of his buddies in the group. Again, the group of girls, giggling all the while, chased each other around through the lab, out the prep room, and back into the hall. At that time, the last girl of the group happened to bump into the human anatomy dummy with her shoulder, sending it crashing to the floor. It hit the floor with such force that it broke, its pieces scattering here and there. Just by looking at it, he could tell that it could not be more horribly broken beyond repair. She and he paused for a moment, dumbfounded by what had happened. Then their eyes met. To Takeshi Nonomiya, it was just an accident that had occurred right before his eyes. He had no desire to cheer or panic. At the very least, since he wasn't the culprit himself, he felt pity on the girl, considering how she would apologize to the teachers and how angry they would be. But after giving him an uncomfortable look, the girl fled back to the corridor. Then, she resumed chasing after her friends. He was left alone with the scattered fragments of the fallen anatomy dummy. From here on, this became a strange tale. Despite his insistence that she had broken the anatomy dummy, the girl and her friends claimed she had done no such thing. No, in fact, they even went so far as to say none of them had gone near the science prep room. But the image of the girl knocking over the anatomy dummy right before his eyes was burned into Takeshi's Nonomiya's mind. It was fixed there so clearly that if he could, he would have printed and developed it like film. But the girls wanted him to produce real proof if he had it. but one can't develop that which is seen by eye alone. So he had no proof to give. Those girls were normally good students, and, thinking statistically, girls at that age are more trustworthy than boys. On top of that, the girls had united their many voices against his. As a result, no matter what he did, the teacher decided Takeshi Nonomiya was lying. It wasn't like he was beaten for it, only harshly scolded. But it was so very frustrating. Oh, he would never forgive the girls who had lied. But what was truly frustrating was that he couldn't present the truth he had seen with his own eyes. Even though people can see the truth with their eyes, as long as they have no proof to back it up, they cannot call it truth. In other words, a person cannot see the truth with their eyes alone. Only by developing what has been captured on film can anyone see the truth. In his current state of mind, he began to wish strongly for something like a camera that could capture the truth and develop it into pictures. His decision to aim toward becoming a reporter or cameraman who sought the truth was a natural result of his youth and righteous indignation at that time. And so, that became the catalyst. From then on, he slowly began to enter the world of photography. But something like a shocking photograph that would fulfill his righteous desires did not come quickly. That lens was instead turned upon the more ordinary things that were close at hand, and before he knew it, he took almost poetic pleasure in the simple things he was able to capture day by day. And those days continued. His happiness eroded away at the frustration he had felt from those false accusations, and soon he began to even forget the name and face of the girl who had caused it all. So, since no one else in his class was quite as passionate about cameras, this hobby became his entire identity in the school. The concept that Takeshi equals camera became a matter of fact, so that even during outdoor school trips, he was allowed to bring a camera along for school journalism purposes. That was a huge boost to his self-esteem, and he even thought that it might be nice to pursue a job involving photography in the future. So, joining the newspaper club came naturally in the flow of events. He was valuable as the person with the most knowledge of cameras in the whole club, and so he would feel a thrill of joy whenever the club counselor called him cameraman. The room was very old. However, in a school that was growing to meet the needs of the increasing student population, having a room that had some obvious history was a mark of pride for the newspaper club. In the room, the club members sat around a desk on folding chairs. The shelves on the walls were overflowing with old books, documents, and clippings, as well as old and broken equipment. There was no way of telling what belonged to the club originally and what had been brought and forgotten by members long ago. And above all, the stench of dust and mildew lingered in the chaotic club room. You know this newspaper club? It seems we've got a super long history. Even before the war, this club's been around since the day the school opened, so the rumors say. The club president muttered this suddenly while the club was in the middle of chattering idly rather than deciding on the theme for the next bulletin. Takeshi, looking for some kind of interesting idea they could go with, was fishing around in the old shelves. Because some of the older shelves in the back had mountains of piled books. Some went as far as to say the place was a nest of demons, and once carelessly entered, no man could return. He was hoping that in that hidden place, he would find something rare sleeping, something amazing enough to put this endlessly repeating meeting to an end. Nonomiya, how's it look? Dug up anything interesting yet? If you're that far back, it's probably all pre-war albums and stuff. You're right. It's amazing. We're in the same room, but over here it feels like I've stepped right into the Meiji period. Like some kind of time capsule right here in this room. Yeah, only, minus the capsule. Everyone laughed hard at that. Weary from the fruitless meeting, it was as if everyone's boiling point for laughter was at a much lower temperature. Just like the club president had said, most of the books on the shelves tucked away in that nest of demons were amazingly old. Even just looking at the dates, they weren't just Taisho era. There were many that went all the way back to the Meiji. As he went through the books, he even found the old, dried, ominous remains of insects. The term nest of demons wasn't all talk. Oh? Suddenly, Takeshi found it. It was an old instant camera. Instant photos tend to lose their color quickly, so it would have been useless for records. However, by using it, one would never need to go through the hassle of a darkroom for developing as they would with a normal camera. To put it simply, it was thought of more as a kind of toy camera. I'd always wanted one if I could get my hands on it, but before today I'd never had the chance. But I somehow felt uneasy about this. That I had found an instant camera like this, buried among a mountain of books that dated back to the school's founding, somehow made me feel uneasy. It was an old camera, but it was beyond state-of-the-art at the time of the school's founding. In spite of that, it had been buried in the depths of this place as if it had been sealed away. I touched it. I felt a tiny jolt, almost like a static shock. I timidly pulled my fingers back, then reached out to touch it again. It was cold to the touch. There were no names written on it or any labels marking it as school property. Judging by how dusty it was, it'd be fair to assume that it had been broken and then abandoned here by some student long ago. I wonder, if I put some new batteries in it, would it even work? No. Even if it did, I can't use the film inside something this old. It had probably expired years ago by now. But somehow Takeshi just couldn't tear his eyes away from this toy he had found. Maybe, just maybe, it could still work. If not, he could always throw it away again. If it did work, it would be the perfect plaything to change up his everyday life. President, do you think this thing will still work? Takeshi hoisted the thing in the air. Once again climbed his way through the demonic piles of books and returned to where the other club members were. What the heck is that? An old beat-up camera? Was it dropped back there? Yes, all the way in the very back. Maybe it's something one of our predecessors forgot long ago. The other club members hoped maybe there'd be something interesting photographed on the film left in the camera. But because this was an instant camera, it didn't retain film. It would instantly develop and eject after taking a picture. Thus, no trace of past pictures could be found. And it wasn't as if there were any club members who wanted to touch this sort of old, dusty camera. After someone suddenly interjected a pun, they all laughed and their focus on the matter completely vanished. Takeshi left them to themselves and put some new batteries into the instant camera. He wasn't expecting it to work. If it didn't, he'd trash it. And the 1 in a million chance it did work, it would be his lucky day. Those were his feelings as he changed the batteries. He turned it over. To his surprise, a glowing light signified that it was receiving electricity. Takeshi aimed the camera at his clubmates who were still laughing among themselves and pushed the shutter. The shutter resisted quite stubbornly, but then it made a pleasant snapshot noise with a click. The club members were shocked when the ancient camera managed to take a picture. Of course, Takeshi was as well. Then a picture appeared sliding from the front of the camera. At first, it looked like there was nothing on it, but slowly an image began to appear. Whoa, that's amazing. It actually worked? Did you capture any ghosts in the picture? An old strange camera like this could probably do that, right? Now that you mention it, I feel like I heard a story like that from someone who graduated. Somewhere in this room, there was a hidden camera that could photograph souls, or something like that. Ah, I heard that from him too. He told me that when someone took a class picture with that camera, students who shouldn't have been there developed on the film. As they were telling these stories, the image on the photograph began to appear. Everyone crammed in close together, butting heads as they tried to see if there was anyone else in the picture. Of course, they did not conveniently see a spirit photograph. The photograph had taken only a mediocre everyday scene of their club. Perhaps it betrayed their hopes, but at the very least, it could serve as a nice memory of their meeting that day. The picture was fairly vivid. Even though this kind of photo couldn't be used for long-term records, it was pretty good for a toy camera. Club President, about this camera, would you say it's alright if I take a look at it for a bit? Yeah, why not? The guy who brought it probably forgot about it a long time ago. It's old, so you probably won't be able to find parts or film for it. You found it, Nonomiya, so it's fine if it's yours now, isn't it? Just like that, Takeshi became the camera's new owner. It could be said the camera probably held no particular interest to the rest of them. There were only a few shots left of remaining film left in it. Someone probably couldn't even play around with it even though it was a toy camera. Even so, his encounter with this camera must have tied him to a divine plan of great importance. With that kind of positive thinking in mind, he headed for the exit. In the end, as usual, the group had fallen back to deciding on a safe theme for the bulletin. More than safe, that idea was so uninteresting that it should have been rejected as soon as someone said it. If they were going to just decide on something like that, they should have done it earlier instead of wasting so much time. Oh well, it was always like that. It was the evening, dusk. In the hallway stained orange by the setting sun, there was no sign of any other students. From a distance, one could hear the rousing shouts of the athletics club. But those were so distant, they only served to accent the hallway's loneliness. So there was no way I could have bumped into someone. I was so excited about the camera that I couldn't take my eyes off of it as I walked. So when I suddenly noticed that someone was there, I jumped in surprise. And in that moment, I felt the camera slip from my fingers. The camera was such a fragile thing. If it hit the ground, it'd definitely shatter. But with the grace of a badminton player hitting a birdie at the last moment, the girl before my eyes gracefully scooped the camera out of the air. It had been a hair's breadth from hitting the ground. You should watch where you're going, right? Next time a camera might not be the only thing that falls over. The girl laughed with perfect grace and elegance. From the way she spoke and the atmosphere, I assumed she was an upperclassman. As I bowed in apology, I glanced at her name tag, but maybe by rain or something else it had been washed out and was impossible to read. And so I was caught in the strange situation of not knowing whether the person I was talking to was older or younger than me. But it really didn't matter how old she was, did it? The whole thing was my fault for being so absent-minded. So, regardless, Takeshi apologized to her as he would to an upperclassman. I'm terribly sorry. Also, thank you very much for catching the camera. Not at all. This seems like an interesting camera, doesn't it? You can tell? Yes, it's an instant camera, you see. It's the type that develops the pictures as soon as you take it. Though it looks to be a pretty old model. Old things often have various things dwelling within them. That camera looks as though it could even capture things ordinary cameras couldn't it? Doesn't it? You know about that too? The older members in the newspaper club had mentioned it. How there were rumors of a spirit camera being hidden in our room. They were saying this could be that camera. That's right. It's true. The girl giggled. Even though there was no wind, the girl's long hair was swaying as if in a breeze. Pictures are cruel, aren't they? They record the truth for eternity. But no one can really know if that is a good thing or not. Human corpses rot, are eaten by the worms, and give off such an unpleasant smell. But in the end, they return to the earth and cleanly disappear. But what if there was a corpse that couldn't rot away? What if such a corpse remained exposed for all to see forever? I wouldn't want that. If I died, it's unpleasant to think that my body would be devoured and torn into pieces, but the thought of existing forever as an unsightly empty shell is unbearable. So when I say that stuffing dead animals and taking pictures are equally as cruel, you understand, don't you? Takeshi got the feeling she was making fun of him. Of course, a person could use a camera in the way she was describing. That's why a cameraman needs to be ethical. What was okay to photograph or what wasn't. Understanding the difference, he had to always choose to share only the good things. What a nice thought. If you're that straight-laced about it, perhaps there is value in entrusting that camera to you. Why don't you run along and play with it? I'm sure you'll have fun. It seemed almost as if this girl knew all about the camera. Of course, there was no way that was possible. That was probably just my imagination. It was almost like she knew of some prank-like mechanism hidden in the camera. The girl giggled with laughter as she walked past my side. In the hallway tinted by the color of twilight, the figure of the girl walking away seemed mysterious somehow. I subconsciously found myself fixing her retreating figure into the viewfinder of the camera. As I did, suddenly, from a window near me came a sharp crack. I jumped and, lowering the camera, looked over that way. Maybe a ball from somewhere had flown and hit the glass or something. The window was fractured in the shape of a spider's web. Then I noticed that the girl had turned and was staring at me. It looked as if she was upset at me for trying to take a picture of her without her permission. That won't do. You're free to photograph whatever you want, but let's not point it my way, I was just thinking it'd be nice to give someone a fright, but to do it here would be a waste. Sorry. I couldn't really tell what she was talking about, but at the very least, I understood that she was upset. She headed toward the other end of the corridor and soon vanished, leaving me alone in the deserted hall with the camera. This camera, just what was it really capable of capturing? The concept of having developed photographs came out on the spot was a joy I hadn't experienced before. Of course, filling up a roll of film and then slowly developing in a dark room was enjoyable in its own right. But the ease of developing film on the spot with that toy-like camera was truly fun. With instant pictures, there was no long wait, and the colors would fade far faster than a normal photograph, because they were meant to be taken in the moment, and enjoyed in the moment, with ease. There were still some rolls of film in the camera, so I stopped worrying about it. Perhaps it was the very fact that it had film left that had made it possible for the camera to rest in peace. To be gathering dust forgotten by someone while there was still film left unused within it was truly a sad thing. If I thought about it that way, it seemed even more like my meeting with this camera was dictated by fate. So I wouldn't worry about wasting the film, and I enjoyed taking all kinds of photos with it. Then, when I'd used all the film, I'd return it to where I found it. So I thought. Because one day, I realized there were only 2 shots left. So I decided to try something with it. Of course, I had mischief in mind. They say if you take a class picture, a student who should not be there will appear. I figured I'd try it and see if that was true. It was during social studies. We watched a video and the assignment was to write down our impressions. I announced that I wanted a picture of the class and took it just for fun. Incidentally, for some reason the film that would always develop fairly quickly took much longer this time. My classmates, who were all waiting to see what would develop, all said the old camera was probably broken. They told me if there was film left I should try again. But I was worried, so I refused, and that was it for photographing that day. Had the chemicals of the film finally gone bad? Somehow I figured that wasn't it. Maybe it had photographed something. Something that should not be photographed? Perhaps the camera was resisting to spare us from seeing that. That day, the deep words spoken to me by the strange girl in the corridor returned to me. It was as if she had wanted me to take that picture of my class. Maybe that's what she meant by her deep words? I just knew there was something captured in this photo. That said, it was incredibly faint, but I thought I saw the picture beginning to develop. I looked at that photo after school, and it was still slowly developing. But even with that, I still couldn't make out the faces of my classmates in it. Takeshi somehow believed it, that in this photo, he had surely captured something mysterious. Carefully tucking that photo away, he returned home, and when he ate dinner, took a bath, or the like, he took it out each time to check it, and little by little it was becoming clearer. And then, in the depth of night when he thought to give up and go to sleep, finally the image appeared clearly for him. He diligently looked over the image, checking the photographed faces of his classmates. Yeah. There wasn't any strange spirit or anything like that on there. God, what was I thinking? How silly. Before I knew it, I was holding my sides in laughter. Even though that photograph had made me wait like this, there was nothing strange caught on the film. The oddly long time to develop made me wonder, but even though I waited for so long, in the end it was a complete letdown. What developed, no matter how many times looked at it, was just a picture of my classmates. I looked at it from the side, I looked at it upside down, something like a long-haired girl glaring or perhaps a strange light or shadow being projected. I saw nothing of the sort. It was simply a classroom picture with my classmates as they should be. That's right. Every one of my classmates. Only faces I knew. Only faces I knew. There was Tano-kun. There was Fukuda-kun. Here's Nishigawa. And Ando-san. And, who was that again? Since I didn't really talk to that kid, I can't remember the name. Who was she again? That absent-minded girl with glasses and that depressed look on her face. It was quite a sad story. We were in the same class and she was even here every semester. But I can't recall the girl's name. Who was she? Who was she really? There was no doubt she was in my class, and yet I can't remember. Who is it? Who is she? Even though it's already time to sleep, somehow I find myself determined to know. I decided that only if I could remember who she was would I let myself sleep. That's right. There was a guidebook from our field trip. Inside, everyone's group divisions were written down, and it should have records of everyone's names. If I look in there, I should be able to find the name I've forgotten. From inside the pile of books on the bookshelf, I was able to find the guidebook. If I were younger, I would have thrown this sort of thing away without regret. It's just that after making cameras my hobby, regardless of photographs, for some reason I've started to take special rare care of recording materials. Because of that, I've even kept this guidebook. Opening the guidebook, I could see a list of students divided by 6 people per group. When the groups were formed like this, there were some clearly incapable and pitiful children there. So those kids were gathered up and made into a mishmash group. Being attached to that kind of group was the same as being labeled a black sheep. I was happy because I was with my friends who had always been there with me. I thought to myself, if there were children who hadn't been blessed with such friends, those kids would probably end up tasting the humiliation each time they'd be put into this group. This girl seemed like she would have been in that kind of group. So surely I thought she must be in that section. No, she's not here. It's not her. In the end, I couldn't find that girl's name. No matter what name it was, I'd be able to associate it with her face. And none of these were the name of the girl I'd forgotten caught in the photograph. Eh? That bad feeling that had been clouded until now had finally burst free. My classmates' names, I knew all of them. I even knew their faces. So that face without a name isn't from my class. What? What? What the? Something began to crawl up my spine. There was only one way to be sure. First, I counted all my classmates in the guidebook. I counted them twice to be sure. Even counting them twice, there were 48 in number. Next, I counted all the faces in the photo. If for some reason the number of faces in this photo, if there's more than that, if there's more... My breathing hurried, intensified. My hands began to shake. The heads began to turn around and round in my mind. My finger was too big to count the faces with. I took out a mechanical pencil and with its tip I diligently counted the number of faces. Please, 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 let it be 48. If it's 49, if it's 49, please let it be 48. There are 48 in my class. Let it be 48. 46, 47, 48. 48. No doubt. There isn't anyone else. Whew! There were 48 students in our class. I had surely counted that many. Toppling over with a thud on the futon as if to laugh at myself, I burst out laughing. All day today, how much have I been worrying about this single photograph, I wonder? Oh man, how foolish, but it was truly fascinating. I was relieved with the result. Or rather, perhaps I was fascinated by a mysterious 49th person in the photograph. It's that camera I had treated like a toy camera from the start. Because of it, I had a lot more fun with it than any normal toy. Only one strip of film remains, but if I left it on purpose and put it back to sleep once again inside the club room, that might be interesting as well. Because future students will find it, and they might enjoy it just as I have. And with that, my meager curiosity was satisfied. I got inside my futon, and as I laid down, I pulled the strings attached to the lamp and turned out the lights. Hey, are you fine with 48? Isn't that fine? After all, there are 48 of us in our class, and that photo surely photographed 48 students. But I was behind the viewfinder, so there should have only been 47. I finally realized what a terrifying photograph I had taken. That girl with the glasses, I have no idea who she is. Could she truly be dead? But compared to the eeriness expected from a typical ghost photo, I couldn't sense that kind of eeriness from that girl at all. That was my first impression from her image. Whether she was there or not, it seemed as if she underwent that treatment. An unfortunate bullied kid, always placed in the group with the leftovers. She seemed like that kind of pitiful girl. Perhaps even not having her name in the guidebook was another form of bullying her. The more I thought about it, the more familiar her presence seemed among my classmates in the photograph. It wasn't as if she was vaguely reflected in a window or mirror. She had a seat like everyone else, and as she was cowering as if someone were about to throw an eraser at her, she seemed like a normal student. She is... Who is she? The more I looked, the more I stared at her, as if I had no excuse for not remembering her name. I had a feeling she was in our class. That couldn't be. I didn't know her. However, I felt that photo she was in was so natural as a class photograph. What is this? What is this photograph? Who is she? No, what is this camera? Tomorrow, I'll head to school and check my class. I'll look at that girl's desk from this photograph, and with that, I'll learn who this girl really is. To do something like forgetting she even exists, much less her name, as a fellow human being in the same class, I have no excuse. Why I had no excuse, I had no idea, but anyway, even if we hadn't spoken, I thought at that moment, not even being able to remember her as her classmate was extremely sad. And then, I knew. The next day, whether it was coincidentally or inevitable, that morning in homeroom I had the job of making an announcement in front of everyone. Because everyone was present, I saw every person in the classroom in front of the lectern. I looked at that desk where the forgotten girl sat. I looked many times over. And so, it seemed I had to cast aside my common sense that told me truth was captured in photographs. After every single thing I did during class, I'd pull out the photo and gaze at it. It was maddening. I didn't want to believe it. Truth is captured in photographs. That was my belief, and because of that, I took pride in being a cameraman. However, something that wasn't true was captured in that image. If that's the case, then I have to know. Basically, I have to find out who this girl is. At that time, I thought that someone thinking this photo was spirit photography seemed both blasphemous to the camera and to myself. So without recklessly showing it to people, perhaps thinking her face might turn up in other classes, I indirectly searched for her figure. But this school is truly massive. With an enormous amount of classrooms even for girls in the same grade, faces of people I didn't know were everywhere. I imagined she might have really been a girl from another class, and she stealthily mixed herself into our class. After all, that day was a self-study session. Other classes had it too, so students could enter our class to mess around, even pretend to be a student in the next seat over. I thought to myself. But from her sad expression, I couldn't sense that kind of extraordinary ambience about her. If she had projected a more mischievous expression, then there might have been room for that kind of thinking. Nonomiya, about that camera from the other day, after all that, did it capture anything interesting? No, nothing at all. Thought so. In the club room, my friends had asked about my spoils of war, but I evaded the question. In their minds, they probably wanted it to take pictures of ghosts, and it had taken that fairly suspicious photograph. Even so, I was denying them that. If I showed this photo to them, everyone would probably be in an uproar saying it was a ghost caught on film. But that would contradict my belief that photographs capture the truth. I also thought it was strange. But I wonder, am I not a man of morality? Of course. That time when I felt mortified by those false charges in the science prep room because I had wanted to dispel those lies, that was my motivation for going into photography. At that time, I had thought over and over again what would have happened if the truth reflected in my eyes had developed into a photograph. The only thing captured in a photo is the truth. I had certainly believed so. Because of that, I don't think I can stand this photograph that hasn't been capturing the truth. No, that's not it. Perhaps it wasn't that kind of convenient reason. Perhaps I was just frustrated. That mysterious girl, I probably knew her. And I was frustrated because I couldn't remember who she was. After an exchange with my friends in the club, since we weren't interested in our work, we decided to head home early. Then, in the same orange-tinted hallway from that day, I once again met that same girl. That's right. Now that I think of it, I believe this girl knows what this camera really is. If so, maybe she can tell me who this mysterious girl is captured in this photograph. If you want to know, I can surely tell you. Even though no words had come from my mouth, regardless, this girl spoke in response to a question I had had in my mind before I opened my mouth. Without a doubt, that girl is your classmate. If you remember her, she'll surely be happy with that. There are 48 people in my class. She's the 49th person. Even in the class register and photos, her name isn't mentioned anywhere. Everyone went and forgot her, you see? It's his fault. Are you heading out? Yes. Well, how about you try checking everyone's names by the shoe racks? If she's your classmate, everyone has a place to put their shoes, don't they? There might be ways to tease someone by hiding their desks and chairs, but there's probably no way to hide a locker in its entirety. Checking the shoe racks. By doing that, I could learn that girl's identity? Even though her name wasn't on the class register, for her name to be left on the shoe racks, that's hard to believe. But that strange girl was saying I should try checking there. That prediction she gave me, that if I wanted a surprise, that camera would deliver. It certainly did. So if she's saying I should check those shoe racks, maybe once again I'll find what I'm looking for. Thanks. I'll try checking it out. You do that. Later. Aren't you heading home? Oh, on this kind of evening, for that girl to be walking in the opposite direction of the exit, I felt something was a bit out of place and spoke to her. If she was taking part in club activities, she'd be at her club room or at the gym. If she were returning home, she'd be heading to the same exit I was. I had no idea what she was doing based on where she was headed. Even the way she walked, she projected a certain atmosphere as if she were taking a leisurely stroll on lunch break. And then she giggled and smiled. Thanks. Why was I suddenly being thanked? I had no idea. That exit is for leaving the school and returning home, you see. So it's useless for me. Well, how about you head home? Your classmates have already left long ago, haven't they? So her class hadn't left school yet then? I noticed her figure vaguely distort somehow. Are my eyes blurry? As if something were in my eyes, I quickly rubbed them and once again looked down the hall, and the girl's figure had already disappeared. In front of the entrance, where students take off their shoes, just as she said, I tried checking the numbered shelves for the shoes of my classmates. And there weren't any shoes or slippers inside them, but there was one shelf labeled with a name tag stuck to it, all by itself. It seemed like it had been stuck on from a very long time ago. It was a worn-out label. Literally, it made me feel its loneliness as if it had been completely forgotten. I squatted down to read it, the name on the label. With a name tag this worn out, surely it was a student from many, many years ago. There's no way I'd know the name. See, I don't know any Marie Moria. I said I don't know anyone named Marie Moria. Even though I had said those words, I felt as if the smell in the air was beginning to change. It felt like noticing something rotten from the garbage disposal. Just like that, I finally noticed that smell hanging in the air down the hallway. Even though I should have noticed it sooner, I had no idea how long it had been in the air. But now that I've realized it, I remember now that it had always been there. Marie Moria. On a rainy day in the classroom, boys and girls were making noise during lunch break. This not particularly special or unique scenery went through my mind. In one corner of the room, the girls gathered and carrying on. I was ignoring that. After all, because they were bullying. I didn't treat it like watching TV after a meal, but that was my good conscience. How many bad girls were there? They surrounded the usual target, and they were lashing out at her about one thing or another. Even the guys were ganging up on her. It was a truly distasteful scene. But I didn't stop it. I didn't feel any sense of duty to protect her, and since I didn't feel I had any reason or necessity to fight them, I did nothing. During the lunch period, someone threw a piece of bread at her that hit her head and landed in someone's bowl of stew. They said it seemed polluted and they couldn't eat it, and so on and so forth. As for where in that process there was any value in accosting her, I couldn't tell. Of course, because I had no desire to intervene, I didn't need to understand it, and yet... If you think it's your fault, then apologize. You should have said, "I'm sorry" earlier. That's right, I'm sorry. Say it! I did nothing wrong. Why do I have to apologize? Who are you kidding? Everyone hear that? What do you think? So, who do you think is wrong here? We have the verdict. Moria is guilty. Moria-san, in pain and bitterness, biting hard on her lower lip, hung her head in shame. That's right. That girl was Marie Moria. That name tag, perhaps, had been waiting a long time for me to remember that. And as if it had finished its duty, it began to dissolve with a hiss. Smoke. No, dust took over as it began to disappear. I blinked and looked again, but all that was there was a solitary vacant shoe shelf. But I didn't need the name tag anymore. After all, I remembered. Yes, in my class there were 49. I ran back to the classroom, and so I recounted the number of desks. I multiplied them in my mind, added what was left, and there were 49. This time it wasn't a hiss. With a whoosh, it was as if a huge wind had blown in. The scent in the air in the classroom changed dramatically. Something had changed. For I, who had no idea what the name Mori Moria meant until moments ago, didn't know what it was, but something had changed. I looked at the bell mark names list on the wall. She was the kind of girl who would bring those to school and have her bell mark score on the wall. Moria starts with M. She'll be towards the end of the list of girls. There it is. Moria. Marie! I pulled that photograph from my pocket. I searched in the desk where Marie Moria had been photographed, and in that place was a terribly warped desk. The top of the desk had been carved with cruel graffiti. Die, ugly, and the like. It was in bad shape. Even her detachable seat cushion that could be used to protect her head in case of emergencies had been covered with ink and was maliciously stained pure black. I slowly took that cushion in my hand, because it was obvious her name would be written on that emergency cushion. Marie Moria. It was clearly written there just like that. I decided I'd make a detour before heading home. I didn't understand what that camera wanted to tell me, but it passed into my hands, and with it I took that photograph. And aside from capturing that girl who shouldn't be there, it must have meant something. In the classroom shelf was the same field trip guidebook I had read last night in my house. By chance I thought to open it, and just as I thought, inside was Marie Moria's name that I had struggled so hard over and over again to find last night. And in her emergency contact information was a phone number, and even an address had been written down. The address was on the way home. It was a public apartment complex. I checked the mailboxes by the elevators. There was no mistake. Among the names by the mailboxes, the name tag of Moria was there. That's it. There was no room for doubt anymore. And I remember. Marie Moria really had existed. She was our classmate. She really did exist, and she even had a home here. That's right. That photograph had doubtlessly delivered the truth. Now the obvious question to ask is, why did we forget about her? No, it's not like we just forgot about her. Her name had disappeared from everything in school, even her desk. I remembered her name, and maybe only I could find her name in the class register and that 49th desk. Could this be that thing from the school ghost story I often hear about? Now that I think about it, I believe I've heard about this. That's right. That rumor about the creation of the 8th ghost story. That rumor about that yokai called Mezo-Mezo-san that appears in the old school restroom. That girl was in fact a bullied student, and that she was killed by a teacher or something, and that she transformed and whatnot. Huh? Wait, what? Have I really heard such a story before now? And the name of that girl was Moria. What? Did I have a memory like that? Perhaps I'm being sucked into this school ghost story because of that mysterious camera. But this wasn't like a vague ghost story or anything of that sort. After all, the traces of Marie Moria's existence were still here. Because even her home is still here. Even though it had always been here like this, the truth hadn't been revealed. I stilled myself and I called the elevator. With my mind made up, I couldn't go back. I had come this far. I'll see the truth for myself. Finding that camera, taking the picture of the class, remembering Marie Moria, and finally coming here was probably no mere coincidence. Someone, for some reason I don't understand, led me here. I walked the hallway of the complex. The various apartments jostled by the hallway mixed with the smells of daily life in the various apartments. On the plus side, it was overflowing with life. But on the downside, the place seemed stagnant with an unwelcoming atmosphere. And so, I finally arrived. Moria? Right here. Affixed to the nameplate was a card written and stained in marker, and written in small print after the last name members. Moria were the names of 4 family members. Marie's name wasn't on there. Wait, that's not right. It's a 5-member family. I let loose a small breath. Summoning up some courage, I rubbed my eyes. Marie Moria. It was as if her name alone had been weathered, and as if the nameplate remembered her name. At the end of the 4 names in the family, vaguely, Marie began to surface. I thought to ring the doorbell, but there was a sticky note left there. Out of order, please knock. I looked at the electric meter. It was moving in a way that suggested the family was home. On the way here, there were still apartments with the evening paper at their doors, but there was no paper on their doorstep. That's a sign someone's home. I swallowed hard, and then once again I looked at the door plate at the name Marie, and then I knocked. I wanted to know the truth. The truth caught on the camera, but what kind of truth was it? I had to find out! Finally, I heard the voice of a middle-aged woman say, "Who is it?" Perhaps it was Marie's mother? I sensed her put on sandals in the entrance and then looking through the peephole. Even if she misunderstood what I looked like, I couldn't have looked like a high-pressure salesman. As if to make sure, the door opened with the chain on. As the door opened, along with all kinds of smells, an older woman's face, more beautiful than I had imagined, peeked out. "Oh, young man, what's the matter?" Excuse me, might you be Moria-san's mother?" "Well, yes, I am, but which of the 2 are you asking for?" If it was like the nameplate read, from there were 2 other sisters aside from Moria and the Moria family. If it was like the nameplate read, then there were 2 other sisters aside from Marie and the Moria family. I thought that's what she meant by which the 2. While saying Marie had 2 sisters implies she exists, then if she didn't exist, asking for her might have seemed inappropriate. And the way she put it made it sound like there were only 2. There was no doubt she didn't recognize Marie. Well, it's about Moria. Eh? Who? Her mother didn't react to the name Marie. She had decided I must have been asking for another one of her daughters, so she must have misheard Marie's name. But I had anticipated that reaction as well. If I'm guessing right, normally we can't remember Marie Moria. Without seeing that photograph I took with that camera, we can't remember her. So I took that photo from my pocket, and while showing it to her mother, I pointed at Marie Moria. It's about this girl, you see. She does live here, doesn't she?" "Eh? Which girl? May I have a look at this photo for a bit?" With a profile that small, even pointing her out with my finger was difficult to indicate where she was. Her mother, with those smells ever so close to her, stared intently at it. I wonder, maybe her memory won't return. Perhaps she'll just think I tricked her into looking at some weird photo. No, that's not right. Perhaps if a person saw a photograph they were indifferent to, they wouldn't concentrate on it for a long time like she was doing. Because I had the same experience, I knew. Her mother was beginning to remember. "Well, don't you remember her?" "Remember? I could tell her words were trembling with uncertainty. I could clearly see her irritation that she couldn't say for sure she didn't know her. In her house, perhaps she didn't really have a family of 4, and a memory was like reviving in her mind that she had a family of 5. And then, in a whisper, she muttered, "Marie. Yes. It's Marie-san. I repeated that. At that moment, she realized it, the truth about her family. At the same time, she burst with emotion. She screamed, "Marie! That's right, Marie didn't come back for ages. Where is Marie? She never came back. She never came back! Where is Marie? Hey, where is she? She's been gone for days, you know. It's my fault. I forced her to study. Never thinking of that girl's personality. Now she doesn't know her own home. She won't come home. She's afraid of me and she ran away. It's my fault. Where is Marie? Marie, please come home!" I knew those words were deranged, but this was the first time in my life I had seen a scenario so befitting the word. Perhaps if that chain hadn't been on that open door, that woman might have come lunging at me. While she screamed for Marie to come back to her, the woman ran back into the house. I didn't know what she was doing, but I had a hunch. Maybe she was searching for remnants that she truly had a daughter called Marie, and that those traces had always been right by her side until now, but she had never noticed them. For her now, perhaps she was seeing something like Marie's favorite mug, even in the cupboards, where there should have been things belonging only to her family of 4. She must be seeing that 5th member's things now. She might have been gathering those things in her confusion as I heard a great clamor from within. And maybe she'd thrust those things upon the rest of the family to prove Marie existed. But her family likely doesn't remember the name Marie. As long as they don't see this photograph, that is. Those violent sounds were probably the sounds of those cupboards being turned inside out. Of course, without stopping, she continued to scream and call out Marie's name. I came here intending to ascertain the truth. But what I had been waited for was just a strange conclusion. I don't doubt that Marie existed anymore, and Marie's mother remembered her as well. But even though we remember Marie's existence, it doesn't change the fact that she does not exist. Even though she isn't here now, we remember her as she was. I wonder, did I do something absolutely terrible? Pictures are cruel, aren't they? They record the truth for eternity. That mysterious girl had said that as if she knew that camera's true purpose. Photographs certainly saved the truth, but that truth wasn't always limited to that person's happiness. If I hadn't brought that picture to her attention, that woman would have probably continued believing she had a family of 4, and she would have spent her life in relative peace. However, I forced her to remember that Marie, one of her daughters, had disappeared long ago and didn't return. That wasn't all. Even her existence had been forgotten by the entire world. So I wonder if anyone can understand her cries of lament, searching for her daughter. No one could understand. She repeatedly called Marie's name, but the rest of her family couldn't understand whose name it was. Things were thrown or fell down with loud crashing noises, but I could sense she was coming back to the entrance once more. This time she might release the chain, open the door, and come charging at me. I ran away. Was it because I was afraid of that woman's madness? Or was it because I couldn't face the truth the photograph revealed? I couldn't exactly understand why, but I was absolutely terrified. Takeshi Nonomiya began to run away from the apartment complex, never to return again. And yet, he could still hear the mother's screams for Marie. Her screams echoed in the chasm of the complex, and they were screams that sounded as if they came from another world. Since I ran in confusion, I couldn't tell how many wrong alleyways I went down. But since I knew I was somewhere in the neighborhood. Without noticing it, I walked down a narrow alley that I had never walked down before. Rather than going down a crowded wide avenue, I felt more comfortable in a forgotten narrow alley where no one would see me. I decided to take out the photograph once again. After checking around to make sure no one else had slipped into this seldom-traveled street, I took it out. No matter how many times I looked, the captured girl's figure called to me as if she didn't... No matter how many times I looked, the captured girl's figure called to me as if she didn't want to be forgotten. No. Maybe she really was. For the first time, I thought Marie Moria, who had been completely forgotten for some reason by the entire world, wanting to be remembered, she might have then developed on this still image. However, her expression was unclear. She clearly looked as if she wanted to be saved. It was as if everyone in class had to be there, so she was unwillingly placed in the photo. It was a resigned sort of expression. Now I began to wonder. After seeing Marie Moria's mother's insanity, I began to think clearly. Did I take a picture that had to be taken, I wonder? And that photo wasn't something that could be taken with just any camera. I had discovered something that was hidden as if asleep from within the jumbled piles of baggage in that place called our clubroom's nest of demons. And on a whim, I had taken that picture. No, I'm overthinking it. There was no way someone could rejoice at being forgotten by everyone. She wanted to be remembered. By everyone. It must be heartbreaking to have your own family forget about you. And so I had to. I had to do as she wanted. That's right. That's absolutely right. It might have been an excuse. But if I didn't think like that, my mind wouldn't have calmed down. I'll head home. I'll go home, get in the bath, and then I'll at least have dinner and wrap myself up in my futon. I had to calm down. I had to think of what I should do. Or perhaps if I did nothing, things would be fine and I could rest easy. In the skyline from across the alleyway, I could see the tall smokestack of the recycling plant that was also used as a landmark for this area. If I walked that way, I should see a street I know or a levee. It was the first time I had walked down that street, but although I had lost my sense of direction, without letting that anxiety get to me, I walked down the alley. But the alley had many turns and bent in many places. Sometimes, like a maze, it would branch off, and as if the alleys were playing tricks on me, they would end in mischievous dead ends. The irritation of not finding a street I knew, since it let me briefly forget what happened at the apartment building, caused me to curse aloud without restraint. Huh? In such a narrow alley, I was startled to find in front of me a looming figure standing in my path. The alleyway was so thin that I wasn't able to pass him without bumping into his shoulders. I wasn't curious to try it either. Regardless, the figure in front of me stood idly in this narrow alley, blocking the way. That figure, in contrast with the broken bicycle, the rain-stained washing machine, and the mistreated plants that lined the alleyway, he didn't seem like he belonged here. My first impression, I felt he was an old British gentleman from a century ago. With a British gentleman's style, he wore a top hat on his head, a suit of some refined taste, and he even had a cane. I couldn't exactly make out his features from under his hat, but I could clearly see that he had a well-grown beard and even a monocle. He didn't look like he belonged in this back alley at all. And it wasn't as if he was doing anything aside from merely standing, idly blocking the street. He didn't seem like he was out for a stroll or out to cool off for the evening. No. Rather, he stood fixed, facing my direction, looking as if he were expecting me. I started to feel a bit uneasy. Thankfully, there was another street nearby. Since I didn't want to pointlessly get near that strange person, pretending as if the wind had somehow carried me onwards, I then turned down the other alley. As long as I could see the recycling plant smokestack and use it like a compass, there was no need to adhere to a specific path. Who was he, though? That man. Rather, if I had seen someone out walking around in their underwear, which would have seemed more natural in this sloppy back alley, then maybe I wouldn't have felt so uncomfortable. But for him to be standing still like that, and to be so utterly obstructive... But just like what I did earlier, forgetting what happened just now might be for the best. Once I was satisfied cursing at last, I found an alley heading in the direction of the smokestack. I turned that way. The neighborhood was beginning to darken and lights began to glow from inside the houses. Perhaps some were preparing dinner. With the sound of vents, the smell of fried food hung in the air. But even so, without any sign of anyone's presence, this alley was a lonely one. I had taken quite a detour, and I felt I had wasted a lot of time. I had intended just to make a quick stop on the way home from school, but now it was already getting this dark. Even by the time I left the school, it wasn't particularly early either. Saying it was expected made sense, but even so, I felt it was a little early to be getting dark. When I saw that figure once again blocking the way, there was no way I was seeing things. It was those characteristic clothes. I couldn't hide my surprise. That elderly British gentleman once again blocked the way. There was no way there was more than one elderly man wearing a strange outfit like that. So then this had to be the man. But is this even possible? I avoided the old man and took a detour through another alley. Even then, what are the odds of coming across the same old man yet again? The old man stood the same as when I had met earlier. As if he were expecting me, he stood perfectly still, blocking the alley. Because of the wide hat he wore, I couldn't make out his expression. But for some reason, he was looking at me. No, I felt he was staring at me. I wanted it just to be my imagination. I couldn't imagine that old man was waiting for me. Earlier, there were sometimes alleys with enough elbow room to squeeze by, but this time there were none. To go forward or go back, those were my only choices. If I asked him to please step aside, would he let me pass? By sheer coincidence, I might have just come across the same old man twice, or perhaps that old man truly was waiting for me. To know for sure, and to escape this strange scenario, there was one simple solution. I could go back and search for a different avenue. If I met him a third time and that old man blocked my way, then that would mean he obviously wanted to speak to me. If I had to share words with that mysterious old man, I'd much rather head back to the way I came. Without hesitation, or rather as hesitant as I could be, I turned back. And after looking over my shoulder to make sure the old man wouldn't follow me, I began to hurry away from there. Sorry, but I can't stay in this alley. It's already getting dark. I want to get home quick. I just want to go home. When my mind understood what was in front of my eyes, chills jumped up my spine. Because, even though I had turned my back on him and left, once again I could see the old man blocking my path. This is impossible. There must have really been two of them. Did they intend to corner me from both sides? What enjoyment could they possibly derive from something so stupid? No, but I can't believe there are two of them. Because the man in front of me and the man behind me looked the same. I can't believe there'd be two of them dressed the same like that. Is there any other explanation? Am I supposed to believe that old man just flew past me from behind me at the speed of light? That's not possible! He's not a yokai. But the fact that he was once again directly in front of me obstructing my path was the undeniable truth. There was no point turning around and running from him again. Even though that was my theory, I had been completely overtaken by fear, so I once again made the choice to turn and run away. Because this time I was truly afraid. There, when I turned, he was there again. And this time he was closer. The old man continued to block my path. There was no doubt any longer. Every time, just as I turned around, he was always on the other side. Even as close as the old man's eyes were, I couldn't see them well from under the shadow of his wide hat. But even so, I couldn't tell he was glaring at me. The way he looked at me seemed just like a snake watching a frog. I felt that if I talked to him now, it would mean my defeat somehow. But until I had an opportunity, I couldn't even lift a finger. And when the old man opened his mouth to speak first, I felt relief for a moment. Well, I suppose it's too late to say good afternoon. Perchance now is a good time to say good evening. Of course, sir. Good evening. Good evening. His voice was like I thought an old man's voice should sound like, but he gave the impression of a coherent, healthy old man who was easy to talk to. For some reason, his warm tone seemed like a teacher's, and I sensed he might have been a teacher from one of the other classes in school. I thought that was a crazy idea. Even though I had just met him, thinking he was a teacher or something like that? Nonetheless, based on what little words we exchanged, he gave me the impression he was a teacher. That idea comforted me. Right before we exchanged some simple words, I had thought he was like a yokai. There's no way someone can talk to a yokai. Humans are the ones who need to talk. At least, there was no need to be needlessly afraid. That simply isn't so. In fairy tales and old stories, on occasion, humans exchange words with spirits like Tengu, Kitsune, Oni, and other yokai. Oh, yes, sir. Even though I didn't say anything, the old man replied as if in response to my inner thoughts. When being friendly with a pet dog, people talk to them as well. Even if you cannot exchange words, it's possible to communicate with them. If you're talking about sharing words, then there's nothing strange about humans communicating with not just animals, but yokai as well. I suppose that's possible. I'm sorry. For some reason, I apologized. I felt as if I had been lectured for concluding that humans couldn't communicate with demons. No, that wasn't it. The old man was really a yokai, and he was upset that I had mislabeled him. Ha 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 ha. Well, that's fine. That's a topic we can have another time, It's getting late. If you don't head home soon, your mother will worry about you. The old man laughed. Once again, it seemed as if he were sensing my words before they left my mouth. For some reason, I recalled that mysterious girl I met in that orange-tinted hallway in the back of my mind. If that girl was something more than human, then surely she must be associated with this old man. I wondered to myself. The old man didn't answer that question in my mind, but if I thought about it, maybe it was obvious. Now then, Nonomiya-kun, you have a strange camera, don't you? My heart skipped a beat. It wasn't how the old man knew about the camera. After all, I was slowly realizing this camera wasn't of this world, and the ones that would know best about this camera were like him, not of this world. Yes, sir. I have it. Where did you obtain it, I wonder? In the newspaper club room, Yes. In the deepest section of the club where books and equipment are jumbled together. That's really quite strange. That camera was oh so securely sealed away. It's not something that is supposed to be found by humans. Then how could you have found it? It's so very strange. Oh dear, oh dear. I must have been strange to this old man as well, because there was nothing stranger than being called strange, a man like this. You don't need to be afraid. I'm not thinking of catching and eating you. After all, you wouldn't have a conversation with your breakfast, If I intended to eat you, rather than talking, I'd be eating. I thought he was laughing in order to help unravel my nerves, but to me, what I heard is that he would eat me rather than talk. Without knowing who this old man was, I still didn't know why he came to speak to me. But I wouldn't forget his terrifying presence. I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I'll speak quickly to the point. I want that camera back. Eh? This is your camera then? No, it's not mine. However, it's not yours either, That's right, but... Haven't I had enough of this mysterious camera? Then this is convenient. If I hand it over to this old man, then I can be rid of it. However, handing over this magic camera that I had discovered miraculously so readily over to the old man seemed wrong somehow, so I had to ask this. Well, what if I don't hand it over? Hearing such challenging words might have seemed pretty disrespectful to him. I should have been more polite, but I forgot that, and unconsciously I treated him like a friend. For just a moment, I had forgotten he was a terrifying demon. But perhaps thinking he'd be willing to barter something mysterious in exchange for the camera, I had said those words. Ho? Are you saying you refuse then? Well, no, it's just since I found this camera, if you say you want it, well, then you gotta give me something for it. It's a lost article, you know. I should at least get a 10% finder's fee. As the sky began to darken, I felt a chill and began to tremble from the sudden cold. I sensed it right when I said those rude words. Then I realized it. I realized that I should have chosen my words more carefully. Exactly when the sun began to set, I looked to the old man. His face was completely covered in pure darkness. I felt that moment of silence would have been scarier than any scream. Kids these days can't be helped, can they? If you speak modestly with them, they misunderstand themselves as equals. Perhaps like in the old days, I'll have to show you how to respect your elders, Takeshi no Namiya-kun. Then I had this strange delusion. I felt I was shrinking. No, I felt as if my feet were sinking in a swamp. The old man, the walls too, I watched as they grew taller until even the sun finally disappeared behind the old man. I realized the mistake I made all too late. Even though I had no room to negotiate or anything of the sort, I still said something so conceited. Takeshi no Namiya-kun, perhaps you need something to light your fire, Or do you no longer think you're such a clever child, I wonder? Takeshi no Namiya-kun. The old man's gigantic head, with his face shadowed in complete darkness, completely blocked out the sky above me. I didn't know whether my legs were shrinking or if I were sinking into the asphalt. Ah! I've got to find the camera! Someone, help me! This isn't the school, you know. Headmaster. Oh my. Higanbana-kun. When I heard that voice, the spell that had been cast on me disappeared. The old man's gaze locked onto something behind me. I looked behind me, and sitting gracefully atop the wall was that girl I met in that twilight hallway. A cool breeze rustled her beautiful hair in her extravagant skirt. She looked like a Western doll that had been brought to life. But at the same time, just like the old man, her being here reminded me of how out of place they seemed in this dirty back alley. Well, I just had a heaping dose of out of place moments ago. Now I'm probably just misunderstanding things. They're not out of place. Surely under these circumstances, I'm the one who can't even protect himself, and I'm the one who is out of place here. I am Takeshi no Namiya-kun's friend. Oh my, is that so? One must take good care of their friends. Do you intend to lay a finger on him? If I, Higanbana, will become your opponent? Is that so? The old man called Headmaster and the girl called Higanbana had gentle tones in their voices, but it seemed they clearly had bad blood between them. And that girl called Higanbana might have made herself my ally. Takeshi Nanomiya-kun, move, or you'll be swallowed up. Just as she said, once again I felt my legs sinking into a pond. But it wasn't a pond. Oozing and expanding from the feet of the old man known as Headmaster was a pure black shadow. It was like tar, and the humans it swallowed must be pulled into the next world. That feeling I had moments ago wasn't just my imagination. I was truly in the middle of being swallowed. I ran back to the girl named Higanbana. She dropped in front of me and stood in front of the Headmaster, blocking his path. For a moment I felt I trusted her, but she was also a terrifying, otherworldly creature. I could sense a terrifying aura seeping from her back, but for now at least she was my ally. But because of that, I didn't feel I could trust her, because they might just be fighting like a fox and a badger over me, their prey. How rude. Why you can't just think, thanks so much for protecting me, I wonder. I'm sorry. I've got to think carefully. They can read my thoughts. There was no maybe about it any longer. They were truly not human. Don't you think it'll be a futile battle? Oh? Can you really call it a fight, though? Taking you on at my age, with the way you play, it's exhausting, you know. Then how about you go home and rest? I'll even spoon-feed you some gruel befitting a bedridden man like yourself. Perhaps you need something to light your fire, I'm familiar with the legend of the Seven, you see. That's right. The school's 7 mysteries. It has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? The pond that seeped out like a black shadow from the Headmaster's feet oozed over towards us and even climbed over the walls. It was as if he were spilling out a world of darkness from the center of where he stood, and that black pond gradually came to Higanbana's feet. That must have been something truly terrifying even for Higanbana. If not, then the Headmaster wouldn't have moved his pawn forward and the like. But Higanbana calmly laughed without making a move. She seemed to be standing there like a fool. Is it all right if I eat you? That was probably the checkmate declaration. Once I noticed it, the black mud was already at her feet. No, not quite at her feet. It was surrounding her in a space about the size of a manhole. That means that if Higanbana didn't finally surrender, she would be swallowed up without a second thought. She had seriously provoked him. Even though the Headmaster's voice is calm, I think he's mad with rage. After he gets her, just like that, he'll surely come and eat me. If I don't run away right now... But my legs had slipped out from under me, and I couldn't even lift myself up from the ground. And I might not even be able to run away any longer. I mean, look, the sun has set as if to close everything within the shadow of darkness, and around me all that was left was a space the size of a manhole, because everything had been concealed by the black marsh. I won't ask again, you know. Is it all right if I eat you? Before you eat me, what if I think I'll be seeing you off to the infirmary sooner, Headmaster? Ho? Higanbana standing there laughing seemed like certain death, and this exchange between them must have been just her way of somehow extending her playtime. But as to why she was playing a game that would only make sense during the day at school was hard to understand. This is a game played by those who control the time after the sun has set on the school. Your lazy swamp sure is taking quite some time to get to me, isn't it? I'm bored. I'm faster, you see. Warned for a moment, injured for a lifetime. They won't even be able to put you in the infirmary. I see. A good proverb indeed. Even a lifetime of injury can result from a moment of carelessness, you see. See? I am that moment. It happened in a moment just as she had boasted. The inner walls on either side of the headmaster swelled up and erupted from all sides. It was different from an explosion. Swelling up and rupturing free, warped spearheads grew like a monster's claws and wrapped around the headmaster. It seemed for the moment that he was like a bird trapped in a cage of thorns. When I looked closer, I saw they were the iron rods that were inside the concrete walls, and they had curved outward and extended, even sharpening their tips into spears. Countless spears surrounded him, aiming at his throat. Maybe now there was no harm in standing up, but for some reason, if I tripped or fell over somewhat, I might land throat first into one of those spears. In other words, I was so completely surrounded by warped spears that I couldn't even move. Of course, looking around Higanbana's feet, it seemed like the same for her. The manhole-sized space that was once around her feet was gone. Perhaps there was just enough there to surround the soles of her feet. This was a critical moment for Higanbana. If she changed her stance even slightly, she would be immediately swallowed up by the pond. There was no doubt that they were both on the verge of taking each other's life at this moment. How like you indeed. You're a troublesome one. Look for an early retirement, okay? But how about I make this your farewell address? Watch your language, Otherwise, you'll surely just bring unnecessary hardships on yourself, won't you? Oh? And what if I want to gladly let you make me taste those hardships? Perhaps you can't. Well then, there's no need to watch what I say, is there? Oh dear, oh dear. Karma. Everything is like the wheel. What you unleash will surely come back to you. Then there's no problem. Aren't we the ones free from those in that cycle of life and death? Takeshi Nonamiya-kun, let's ask you. Truth or peace? Which do you value more? Huh? I hadn't thought I would suddenly be dropped into the conversation. My heart began leaping in my chest. Now, after seeing that otherworldly scene, there was no doubting the truth that they were yokai, and that yokai was once again talking to me. Perhaps you should choose. Truth, peace. Which do you value more, Don't lend him your ear. If you replied with peace, what do you think would happen? Higanbana-kun, cease your trickery. I'm asking him. Well, Takeshi Nonamiya-kun, which do you value more? Truth and peace. What does he mean by having peace in opposition to truth? Perhaps he means denying the truth, therefore having peaceful days through ignorance? Surely, ignorance can be bliss, but that can't be a good thing. For humans, even if we don't want to, there are truths that we must know. For instance, an environmental problem is a good example. If I were to discuss it, surely we'll have to face some restrictions in our lifestyles. But nonetheless, if we pretend we don't know about it and continue living peacefully, the price will certainly befall the future of humanity. Haven't I learned that from life in the newspaper club? If people avert their eyes from the truth, thrusting it at them, we must raise these questions. Marie Moria's photograph certainly was a strange thing, but Marie, who had been caught in that photograph, was forgotten by her classmates and everyone else, even her own mother. By showing her that photo, her mother remembered. Sure, it might have been something shocking. Undertaking the impact of what she'd forgotten until now, I can understand why she'd temporarily panic. But Marie Moria must have been happy with that I had let her remember. She must be rejoicing somewhere. Perhaps she's been swallowed by this demon called Headmaster and her existence extinguished. And that camera dug up the truth that Marie Moria certainly did exist. it brought back her existence that had been extinguished with the power of a yokai. That's it. When revealed on film, it becomes the truth. Regardless of what might be revealed there, just seeing it invokes that truth. And when I saw the power of this mysterious camera with my own eyes, I was certainly terrified. But if I think about it, I didn't do anything strange. But what was strange was the disappearance of Marie Moria's very existence. That was much worse. With that camera, I tore through the doubt and revealed the truth. I protected the name of Marie Moria. And without even opening my mouth, I had created my clear answer. So he thinks, Headmaster. Takeshi Nonomiya-kun chose truth. To choose truth over peace? So like a youngster to say. Very well, Higanbana-kun. Perhaps we should stop here for now, How wise. After all, I don't want to get my favorite shoes dirty. I agree. I don't want my favorite overcoat to be full of holes either, you see. The warped spears that surrounded the headmaster, as if being rewound on a videotape, began to be swallowed by the walls they ruptured from. And returning to a bulge, they gradually became flat, as if nothing had happened at all. The rain-stained walls returned to their original smoothness. At the same time, the ground nearby that had been completely filled with a black pond, moving sloppily, began to return to the headmaster's feet. I noticed that everything around was as it was before. Even the brightness of the sky. I felt as if I had been squaring off for a long time, but perhaps it was for an instant. The smell of fried food reached my nose. That was probably that smell that hung in the air earlier, even though it felt like that smell had returned. How can I best describe it? I felt as if the air of the living had returned. If so, was that back alley a different world than this one? Now that I think of it, I can't tell. Well then, I suppose I'll excuse myself, shall I? Takeshi Nonomiya-kun, I've been keeping you, haven't I? Head straight home. Well then, Higanbana-kun, some other time. Yeah, some other time. I'll come visit you and bring you gruel. Just a spoonful. Ho 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 ho. May I have two? You're right. You've earned the honor. I'll bring 2 helpings of gruel. Later then, take care of yourself. Indeed, indeed. The doll in the infirmary would say something like that in farewell, eh? Ho 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 ho. The headmaster's figure slowly diluted away. It was like a swaying mirage. Thinking my eyes were getting fuzzy, I wiped my eyes, and when I looked again, he had completely disappeared. However, Higanbana didn't disappear, and there she was. She turned to me and stretched out her hand. She was laughing mischievously, as if wordlessly wondering how long I had been lying there. Thank you for helping me. You're welcome. If I had come just a tad later, you would have unknowingly disappeared here in this alley on the way home from school, you know. Not just your physical form, but from the class register and group pictures too, yeah? Of course, maybe even your teacups might disappear from your house. Higanbana laughed as if to say, as you are now, you understand best of all, don't you? A moment longer and I would have been sucked into that pure black pond. And then, like Marie Moria, even memories of my existence will surely disappear from the face of the earth. And aside from photographs, this mysterious camera captured my existence would be completely forgotten. In our school, he's been a school yokai for a very long time, you see. We call him school yokai of the 1st rank, Headmaster. I am Higanbana of the 3rd rank. Haven't you seen the Western doll sitting atop the medicine cabinets in the infirmary? No, I've never gone to the infirmary. Oh? Then I'll invite you next time. I'll send an invitation along with an appropriate injury worthy of the infirmary, perhaps. Higanbana gave a mischievous smile, but I didn't feel like laughing. Just watching her last exchange, she seemed more dangerous than the headmaster. What I saw was what seemed like the headmaster attacked her with everything he had and begrudgingly had to retreat. That terrifying creature was right in front of my eyes. If I had the impoliteness he had before, this time I would certainly be killed. Right. That's fine with me. Fear communicates respect. It's one of the fundamental rules of etiquette so one doesn't get cursed. Don't worry. It's just like he said, you see. If I intended to eat you, I wouldn't wait and I'd take you in a single bite. Talking with you like this means that at least for now I have no intention of doing so. For now? There's no need to be so afraid, you see. Right now, the soul of Takeshi no Miya-kun just doesn't look that tasty. I don't have the urge yet, you see. Looking at it now, all the fuss would ruin the flavor. Which means I can't relax at all. Because now I clearly understand who's dominant on the food chain between us. Well, come with me. This alley is his barrier. If you're by yourself, no matter how far you walk, you'd only keep circling around this same alley, you see. Why me? Why was a yokai who treated humans like food saving me? As long as I couldn't know for sure, I couldn't come with her. After Higanbana made a face as if to say, "Oh geez," as a serene expression befitting her return, she spoke. Because you're getting revenge for my friend, so perhaps you could call it returning the favor? Revenge? Today you went to my friend's house and let her mother's memories return. Oh, of Marie Moria-san? Yes, Marie is my friend, and he erased her existence. That old man known as the Headmaster? Having everyone forget about her isn't such a bad thing. Even if all the people in school forget about her, then at least he'd want her family to remember her, right? But because he's ruthless, he snatched away memories even from her parents. Right? Isn't that terrible? What in the world is this camera? It's equipment from our class, you see. It can't be fooled by trickery of any kind. It shows the truth. Earlier, when I looked at her name tag, it was as if it were washed out by the rain, and I couldn't read it. But now I could read it faintly. Her class was Classroom B. No, I could read Classroom 13 written there. Certainly there were many classes and students in the school, but I didn't think there were... Certainly there were many classes and students in the school, but I didn't think there was any grade with a Classroom 13. At least for humans, that is. Classroom 13. Perhaps that's the classroom where the yokai live in the school. And speaking of that classroom's equipment, it makes sense something with mysterious power would come from there. You can imagine it, can't you? To him, that camera is an inconvenience, because it would release the human he ate, you see. He didn't just eat her humanity, but even her existence. Taking a picture with that camera, bringing back her presence, is the same as taking the food out of him. Not just her meat and bones, but to even eat her very existence. What a terrifying yokai. Well, there's also times that's convenient. Among the classmates, coming in and out of the newspaper and club room, you were in the same class as Marie. So I made you find that camera. Just as the headmaster said, that camera had been carefully sealed away, and he said it wasn't something humans could simply find. It made sense. This Higanbana person wanted revenge for her friend, removed the seal on the mysterious camera, and allowed me to find it. Exactly right. I gave you that camera. Would she let me keep it, I wonder? And then, as if to confirm it, she giggled again. Even though I couldn't escape that alley no matter how far I walked, when I walked with Higanbana, we soon came upon an intersection bustling with people. When the cars weren't coming and going, there were people quickly heading to their homes. Surely this was the human world. Thank you. Now that you've taken me this far, I should be fine. Oh? You use the person who saves your life like a guidepost, and then after that you say, "I'm fine now, goodbye." How cruel. Well, are you saying you need, something in return? I was a little worried. Surely she may have saved my life. Yet the thought of what a yokai like her would want in exchange scared me. If that's true, then I would have killed you. For example, taking off one of your arms wouldn't be so bad, would it? I got goosebumps. If those words came from a human, then they would just be a joke. But since they came from the mouth of Higanbana, a yokai, they transformed into the most terrifying of words. Jeez, I'm joking. I wonder if you at least treat your savior to a cup of tea. But, well, I don't really have any money. Oh my, you poor guy. Well then, let's have some tea at your place. Oh yeah, you're interested in the camera, aren't you? I'd like to come see the photo albums you've taken with it. That is what I want in return. My albums, you say? But they're truly worthless albums filled with worthless pictures from around the neighborhood. I don't want to take a yokai to my home. Oh shoot. If I think like this, she'll just read my thoughts. But if I refuse, she'll probably really tear off one of my arms. When she said I was her friend, I didn't share the sentiment. But I was too scared now to displease her. After all, compared to losing an arm, letting her see my albums was no big deal. With that kind of attitude, I could learn to like you. Well, let's be off. Since it's been a long time since I've been outside the school, I'm really enjoying this. As if she knew where my house was, she started heading off on her own. But with the way she walked, looking like she was having fun, I couldn't help but think I had made a new, albeit somewhat overbearing friend. Having something like a yokai for a friend, isn't that kind of cool? Then being scared of her and whatnot would be rude. After all, she saved me. Although my albums are nothing to brag about, I should at least let her see them. Perhaps she might even show me some ghost photos I didn't notice before. I strained to think positively as I followed after Higanbana in my confused state. My house was in a relatively unremarkable neighborhood. A tiny plot for a garden and a garage. It's 2 stories high, but not particularly spacious. The house was empty. My mother was probably out running errands. All it would have taken was one more mistake today, and I might not ever come home again. Let's say, even though I've returned home with a yokai, I'm glad to pass under that familiar entryway unharmed. Higanbana stopped before the entrance. After looking up at the house, she stared at my back. Could she be so modest that I have to say, "Please come in," I wonder? Thinking as much, I said, "Come in." So that's what coming home feels like. I can feel a strange relief from you. But I think everyone would feel that way after coming home. I'm a school yokai. Since home is so nearby, that coming home emotion is something I don't really understand. Where do school yokai live? Isn't it obvious? Our home is in the school. Although I suppose it's different than home in that sense, you could say. Home means somewhere safe and peaceful, right? For us, perhaps it's better to say it's just a house, not a home. Even though you're a school yokai, the school isn't safe? If I'm not always hunting, then I'm being hunted. That's probably fair different than a peaceful houseful, wouldn't you say? In fact, the school is probably the same for the rest of you. If I'm not always hunting, then I'm being hunted, huh? What she was talking about wasn't just limited to the world of yokai. That rule even applied to the rest of us who spent our days in the classroom. There wasn't a class or grade that didn't have bullying. Basically, no matter how much we try to deny it, it's an undeniable social phenomenon. If the sun rises, shadows must take shape. Where the sun hits, there is warmth, and where it doesn't, an unpleasant cold takes hold. As long as the sun is shining, I think everyone would want to be there. Even if they had to chase its shadow, they'd try to make that sunny place their own. In other words, that game of musical chairs we played so much in nursery school. At the end of the day, we didn't learn the valuable life lesson it was teaching us. Because if we're on the bullied side, and we'll always be looking for our chance to switch to the bullying side. It seemed nothing was different for Higanbana and the others in the yokai world. Yet as humans, if we return home to our families, we can at least relax and feel safe until the sun rises. But yokai didn't have that. Maybe this Higanbana yokai was yearning to embrace what it means to return home? After all, didn't she want to come home with me? Even though she did those frightful things before my eyes moments ago, for some reason now I somewhat understand her. This was the first time I'd ever invited someone over for tea. All I could do was prepare 2 mugs and stir up some hot cocoa. I went up to my room upstairs holding the mugs. Higanbana was quietly sitting on a cushion on the floor, waiting patiently for my return. So this is your nest? I don't know what you mean by nest, but I suppose you could say so. As if she were fascinated, Higanbana looked here and there, taking in her surroundings. The overwhelming reality was that there was a beautiful girl who looked like a French doll in the middle of my room. And that uncomfortable feeling alone made me feel like my room was a different place. I want to look at your albums. Will you show them to me? There's nothing special in there, but if you don't mind that. I carefully pulled out a few albums filled with pictures from the bookshelf and handed them to her. Emotionlessly, she began flipping through the pages seemingly without interest. Since her expression looked so indifferent, I was a bit scared I might have been boring her. It's nothing like that. Non-school scenery interests me, and my face is like this by nature. I'm not bored or anything. There's no need for any strange concerns, you see. Again, I didn't speak, but she answered my thoughts. I stared at her. If I thought too much, she might read my mind and get upset. So I took out the camera from my bag. If I at least pretend to do some maintenance, then I can kill some time. A man and a woman sharing the same room, each quietly handling their own work. Somehow it was a laughably awkward yet strange scene. Sometimes I'd steal a glimpse at her. Expressionless, she literally looked over the photos mechanically. She would turn the page at the same time every time. With the way she read, I felt like I was watching the mechanism of a mechanical doll at work. She might have said she wasn't bored, and yet, as she looked at my pictures, I was just a tad interested in what an ethereal being's thoughts would be. I thought, and as if in response, she spoke. Well, I think that the photos in these albums are arranged chronologically, because how your interests move with time, I find learning these things to be extremely interesting. Are you saying that by following what I photograph and when, you can read my emotions? That's about right. Looking at these, it seems you're cropping the subjects of your photos, but you're really cropping your hand out of the picture. Looking at these, I can tell you took photos of your thumb. It's quite amusing. Having my work looked at by someone else is a bit embarrassing. What made you interested in photography? Looking at your early albums, they seem somewhat aggressive and harsh. That means those early photos do appeal to me, however. At least taking her eyes off the album, she looked at me. That gaze seemed mischievous somehow, and she looked at me as if she were reading the albums. Long ago, I was falsely accused. At that time, I saw the culprit, I saw the truth, and even though I told the truth, my teacher wouldn't believe me. Then you thought, if only I had a picture of that truth, right? Of course, you still had a lot of resentment back then, so your first photos are cruel ones, no? They look so absolutely vicious that I think if I simply touched them, they'd split my fingers in half. As she judged the photos cruel, I couldn't possibly link that word to them. They all showed completely ordinary, everyday images. Perhaps there was something there that only someone who isn't human can see? Yet it was like she said, I remembered every photograph. In other words, looking at the photos meant I could remember the emotion I felt when I took them. Then I knew. From the first moment I took a camera in my hands, from that day on my eyes were lit with a rage seeking to prove my innocence. However, my incident has long since been decided in my false accusation. I had been decided as the culprit, and I couldn't overturn the verdict of what took place in that science prep room. But it might have been to expose future injustices. I could at least reveal them, and I thought I could at least then rid myself of that vexing feeling caused by my false accusation. I see. But your photos keep changing. Gradually they get gentler, calmer, mediocre, dull, and boring. Why did your feelings change like that? Probably, well, doesn't it mean I've just calmed down since then? In the end, there was nothing I could do after the incident was done and over with. It was so painful that I even soaked my pillow in tears, but there was nothing I could do anymore. People's grudges aren't frozen in eternal ice. Sometime, it eventually begins to melt away. Eventually, I began to take more interesting things with my cameras. How interesting. You, who used cameras to seal your cruel photographs away for eternity, suggesting that eventually time dissolves the hatred away? Surely you said something happened to you long ago too, Higanbana-san. Fading is also beautiful. It seems you're saying that not letting things fade away with photographs is cruel. Yeah, that's right. Since you didn't leave it in the photos, you were able to resolve your self-resentment over time. With that in mind, by taking photographs, by capturing the cruel reality, you let those feelings remain for eternity. What an interesting contradiction, don't you think? For some reason, I feel as if you're condemning me. I'm intentionally making a distinction between what's all right to forget and what must not be forgotten. Surely that incident gave me sorrow, and I haven't really forgotten it, but thinking I'd always remember it with resentment, I had no choice. Quickly forgetting it, changing my outlook, creating a positive lifestyle. I thought that was the much better route to take. How boring. Eh? Higanbana shrugged with a smile. She clearly looked like she was making a mockery, but as for what she was mocking, I didn't understand. When you first took up your camera, like sharpening a razor, you were a boy who slashed everything he touched. That side of you greatly interests me. Surely she wasn't praising me. Well, after that incident, I think I started to get fed up with all sorts of things. I wonder, how did that resentment go away? As I keep saying, in time it resolved itself. Before I knew it, I didn't care anymore about it. When? How? Why did it no longer matter? Did you just forget? Holding an album, Higanbana slowly stood up, and spreading the pages before me, she called my attention to a group of unremarkable photos. No, it was as if she were about to tear the album apart. She showed me the threshold between the pages and tore it in half. Up until this page, we have the lingering photos smeared with resentment. And from here on, we have the dull daydreaming photos. Hey, what was in these pages, I wonder? Did you forget? I could feel the weight of Higanbana's laughter piling up layer upon layer. I could hear my own scream from having my album torn apart among them. It felt like a reverberation, not unlike someone toiling the bells in a temple for fun. For some reason, my body shook, and it felt like I was seeing the whole room from underwater as my vision blurred. Even within that blurred reality, her form unaltered, she stood with grace and spoke to me. No. Ridiculed me. Even after you howled with such rage, how could you forget? There's no way you could forget. So how did you forget? Well, if you don't look at your own photos, how will you remember? As she opened it, from the album she thrust at me, countless photos spilled out. I couldn't tell from which pages they fell from. Even though she wasn't swinging it around the album she held, it was as if a spring were gushing forth. Flip, flip, flip. The photos spilled one after another from pages unknown. Flip, flip, flip. Just like a leak would make a puddle of water on the floor, it was as if the photos began to make their own pool. Those photos, with a single glance, I knew what they were. Of course, none of those photos were things I had taken photos of. I mean, the photos I did take, I remember every single one. If I didn't remember them, then they weren't my photos. And yet, while Higanbana sneered at me, she kept spilling even more photos from the album. Do you still not remember? She muttered with an ominous smile. How painful for you. If you had faults, no matter the number, you came to accept them, didn't you? You might not remember, but the culprit was clearly right before your eyes, and yet, when you were framed, didn't it boil your guts in frustration? All the while you were hatefully, painfully, and bitterly thinking to release that rage by using your camera as a weapon, didn't you? And then what did you do? What do you mean by what did I do? I didn't do anything! Didn't you tell the headmaster you'd choose truth over peace? Behold, that truth is overflowing right here. Please take a look with your own eyes. Stir those memories inside you. Well, go on. Higanbana thrust her hands in the pool of photographs stretching out around her feet. She tossed them up as if she were splashing water at me. I was afraid of something. I couldn't look directly at those photos. But those photos couldn't have been mine. I mean, I do not remember them. So they could have nothing to do with me. And yet, I was afraid to look at them. After all, no one remembered Marie Moria in that photo. Even though she existed, no one remembered her. But when anyone like me or Marie Moria's mother saw the photo, they remembered her. It brought back that which shouldn't exist. Regardless of already being in front of my eyes, I don't remember those photos, so they have nothing to do with me. I do not remember, so I've got nothing to do with them. Hate, pain, and bitterness. Do you remember now what you did? If you won't dispel your denial, how do you intend to rid yourself of that resentment, I wonder? That's right, you want a revenge against that girl who framed you? Hey, in that science prep room in front of your very eyes. Do you remember that girl who knocked down that human dummy? I remember being very, very bitter. The girls ran away, knocked the dummy's shoulder, and it fell over. Then the girl's eyes and mine met. Her face. Do you remember? I don't. Maybe because it's sunk into my subconscious, or perhaps like Marie Moria, it's something that cannot be remembered? I don't know anymore! But I'm sure that our eyes met in that science prep room. That moment she made a face as if to say, oh shoot. In other words, from the outset she understood it was her fault. And yet, how dare she shamelessly say I was the one who did it? And yet it was so frustrating, so frustrating! Over and over again I sunk my teeth into my blanket. I soaked my pillow in tears. And yet, I can't remember! It can't be, but why can't I remember? I had hated her so much, and yet I can't even remember. How did I forget her face? No, not just her face. Her name was... Wasn't she a girl from my class? Was she... Her name was... I can't remember. Did I forget it? Can I just not remember it? Or maybe just like the way Marie Moria was forgotten, she was erased from my memory? I just don't know. Littered around my feet, the unknown photos surrounded me, mocking me. I mustn't look at those photos. I mean, they're nothing but photos that I've stupidly forgotten, aren't they? I'm sure she wants you to remember who she is, too. Her name is Yoko Numata. Come on. Come on, come on. You remember now, don't you? Come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. When I heard the name Yoko Numata, in the exact same way Marie Moria's mother had done so, I screamed. That was it. That name. That was her name. Just hearing that name brought back the rage from that day. Even though that name etched so much hate in my heart. How could I have forgotten it until now? That's right, it's that bastard, that weird old man, the headmaster. It's because he completely erased the name and memory of Yoko Numata from the world. Well, does that mean one of his victims? No, that's not it. No, no, no! This pain hollowing my heart, my guilty conscience. I must remember! I must not remember! Yoko was always having fun, so you thought. If you always kept an eye on her, surely she'd do something else like before, and once again she'd probably pass the blame on to someone else. You thought to seize that opportunity, expose her, and indirectly restore your good name, right? But even that was deceitful. With your mind overflowing with hate, there was no room for such a noble goal. What you wanted wasn't to clear your name. You only wanted revenge on her, to hurt her. You began to stalk her. You thought if you monitored her closely enough, surely a similar incident would happen again. That's how it started, right? But no convenient new incidents occurred. As you continued to persistently stalk her, you started getting irritated, because that event you were expecting wasn't happening. A rage began to bubble up inside you with no place to go. Because of the way you were, even the evils you expected her to commit became far more minute and subtle. Because that incident seemed to eat up your time, even simple mistakes in her day began to expand like a foot of a mountain as the targets of your photographs. And then one day you realized it, that you were taking photos of those minute details, and those were more than enough to catch her and take your revenge. No. With just that malicious mindset, stalking her would be revenge enough. As you secretly took pictures of her daily mistakes, you'd secretly send them to her. And their contents were completely worthless. You continued framing blurred photos of her daily routine. But to her it came as a huge shock. 24 hours a day, someone was watching her, and that fear that someone might be photographing her caused an unfathomable impact on her. Around that time, by chance, she had some trouble with her close group of friends and grew estranged. By chance, she also had a lot of enemies, you see. With no one to go to, there were few she didn't suspect of secretly taking pictures of her. You recognized the time was right, and you relentlessly followed her and piled up secret photos. You made humorous dramatizations of her photos, pretending it was news or a scoop to get the class to look at them. At their cruel age, your classmates thought that was amusing. Humans love that sort of thing, really. They love to gang up on a weakling. You'd think normally around that time the girls would all get together and save her, but she was truly unlucky because she had isolated herself from that group. Truly unfortunate. Not having a friend in that school was crueler than being cast into a desert without water to drink. No, it might be like being cast into a sea of sharks without a life raft. With no distinction between men or women, the entire class picked her as their target. It was completely different than your original plan for revenge, and it had greatly exceeded your expectations in its success. Since you followed after her holding your camera, some of your classmates might have known you were the culprit, but because they were enjoying it, they protected you. Ironically, even the girls who agreed with her story when you were framed confessed that you were not the culprit. What a wonderful feeling it must have been. You were cleared of your vexing false accusations, and on top of that, you also had your revenge. No, I don't think that's quite right. On top of that, you also continued your revenge. Makes more sense, I think. Because if you were to clear your name, the goal was clear and it had to end. But that revenge had no clear goal or end. You continued to chase her for your amusement. Since you had no end in sight, the result was inevitable. In the end, with no one to turn to, she took everything you had alone and wanted to end her life. Suicide. Her suicide had one message she wanted to send in revenge to that culprit who drove her to it. Unpleasant, no? Your bullying target went and killed herself. Truly unpleasant, no? And here you had been so fortunate. Saying you want to die means that your soul has been ruined, right? Among our class, there are school yokai who find that a delicacy, you see. He enticed her, drove her to kill herself, and with a slurp, he ate her up. Yokai eating people and the like. Unbelievable, isn't it? It should be. After all, when people suddenly go missing like that, it would be a big deal. But there's nothing reported in the newspapers or on the TV like that, so it can't be true. If we caused a riot among you humans, it would be extremely bothersome. Humans would become afraid. They wouldn't come to school and we couldn't feed, right? So when we school yokai eat humans, we also erase the memories of their existence from the entire world. Just like Marie and Yoko, no? We erase them as if they had never existed from the beginning. There aren't many yokai with this terrifying power. In our school, there is only one. He is the headmaster. When the time comes for us to harvest a human soul, we give some of that soul to the headmaster, who wipes the pitiful sacrifice's memory of existence from the world. Since he's a bit of a senile old fool, because of this power, he's remained established as the first rank among the school yokai order. If he didn't have that power, I would have torn him limb from limb and taken his seat myself. More and more the headmaster is losing his ability to hunt. He has us hunt, and he can't eat without skimming some off the top of our prey. He's a pitiful creature. Well, because of that, I erased her. That's right. If she had normally committed suicide, it would have been a big deal and you and the school might have been investigated by the police. But you were lucky, because she fell prey to a school yokai. It was as if that suicide never happened. That's how you suddenly forgot your rage. That's how those completely blurred, stupid photos you took and never noticed came to be, you see. Why did you give me this camera? I had 2 reasons. That camera has the power to take down the headmaster. I entrusted it to you and had you take pictures here and there. I wanted you to reveal his forgotten victims that surrounded you. You restored Marie's memory to her mother, and in her confusion, her soul seemed like it would suit my tastes. I wonder if she perhaps somehow flipped over the veranda and died of an accident somehow. If she committed suicide in her confusion, it couldn't be thought of as the work of a yokai. There's no need to give any to the headmaster. I can wholly devour her delicious soul. The truth was, I wanted you to take many, many more photos here and there around the classes, you see. I really wanted you to know just how many in your age group have become forgotten sacrifices. It was too late. I couldn't doubt it anymore. Higanbana had no girl's heart to make me think of a refined French doll at all. She pretended to be that, and she was cruel and merciless. Her laughter felt like the cruel innocence of a child enjoying itself after picking up a bug and plucking its leg off one by one. The other goal was I wanted to give my friend a chance, you see. Friend? Chance? Now that she mentions it, didn't Higanbana say Marie Moria was her friend? Doesn't that mean indirectly she would resent me for driving her mother to her death? Not Marie. Yoko. Somehow, I understood. Everything Higanbana said until now was all a ruse. From the very beginning, I was her prey. She has violently stirred up my sin, that I went too far in my own revenge and drove Yoko to suicide. So to Higanbana, I'm... Yes. No soul seemed more delicious than yours. I thought to eat you right away, you know. But just before that, the headmaster erased the memory of Yoko and erased your consciousness of your sin from within. It was as if your ripe soul was left out too long and turned to stale fruit. The fact that I was just a step away from devouring you and forced to wait vexed me for ages. I wanted to add that something to your soul for flavor. I've waited so long to have a chance to eat you again like this, you see. Understand? She put her slender white fingers to her chin, and then in terror, my legs gave in. In the middle of my messy room, I fell backwards into the sea of photographs. Well, come on then, Yoko. Now is the time for revenge. How long and how much have you suffered in sorrow? Teach him a lesson, because this is your only single chance in eternity to do so. There's a shadow behind Higanbana. A mushy, warped silhouette. It was as if it were a shadow that detested the brightness and hid behind her back. That shadow slimily grew arms, using Higanbana's shoulders to steady itself. It revealed its form. I remember. That's right. Yoko Numata looked like this. I wonder what in the world kind of body she must have met her end with. The clothes that clung to her were just like the ones I'd seen countless times at school before. But they were like worn-out rags. Dirty, worn-out, and quite miserable rags. Nonomiya... Numata-san! Pure white like candle wax. Just like her worn-out clothes, her skin hung loosely in the same way. Now that I remembered her when she was alive, her ugliness was beyond pitiful. Appearing with such an atrocious body, her figure might have represented my sins. The more I thought, that pitiful atrocity gouged my heart.
Hey, Yoko. You said you wanted to cross into death? In exchange for your life, you said you wanted to have revenge on the ringleader. Despite the ruthlessness of that yokai who invited you to die, this dancing Higanbana is deeply compassionate. I've expressly brought you back and given you your chance. So how about some gratitude for this kindness?
Nanamiya did... to... Her body might have been rotting or frozen. It was like tainted meat left in the refrigerator, an extremely horrible thing. She just stood there trembling painfully, struggling even to speak. But what she was trying to say, those quivering eyes said it all. Nanamiya-kun did to me? She moved to touch me, and with each step she walked, at the same time I retreated backwards on the ground.
I wonder what's the matter, Takeshi Nanamiya-kun. It's not entirely your fault, is it? If Yoko hadn't cowardly worked to frame you, none of this would have happened in the first place. Basically, Yoko is suffering the consequences for her actions. Passing your sins to another invites more sin, and she is paying the price. So I wonder if Nanamiya-kun needs to point out the one-sidedness. You have the right to speak. You have the right to remain silent. When humans die, you see, they're powerless. If they die, they're nothing. Humans that continue to live are much stronger, so they must continue to live. And humans that frivolously part with their lives, naturally, will suck their bones dry. In my deep compassion, I brought her back, Yoko in her powerless, deceased state, and in her distress, she frivolously gave up her right to fight to the bitter end when she threw her life away. I've given her that chance of revenge, so now she can reveal herself once again before the still living Takeshi Nanamiya-kun. Hey, Yoko, how about you tell him what kind of hell souls can crawl around in after they've been sucked dry? You don't want to go back, do you? Then how about fulfilling that revenge? After you take his soul, I'll let you have a bit of it. After that, you'll never return to that hell again. As my servant, I'll treat you and feed you fairly. Sounds good, doesn't it? If you think about it, it's much better than returning to that cold, cold, freezing hell, isn't it? Well, Yoko, take Nanamiya-kun's life. And Nanamiya-kun, if you want to live a long life, send Yoko back to the hell she came from. At a glance, Yoko's body might have seemed unpleasant, but hers was a form that shouldn't have been able to come back to life. Strangling your opponent to death isn't as hard as Nanamiya-kun thinks it is. At any rate, with the same bitterness you had, she chose a simple suicide. You showed me your power of continuing to live through revenge. For those who choose death, there is no dignity, no second chance, nothing. The ones that survive are the right ones. Well, how about you take Yoko's neck in your hands? Twist it like a stuck lid on a jar of jam. And then that'll be the end of Yoko. She'll plunge back to hell again. If you don't want that, Yoko, then before that happens, snap Nanamiya-kun's neck. Because as you are now, I've granted you the power to do as much. Higanbana stirred us up like so, and in her elegance, no, this time I knew, she was bursting with giggles of laughter from which there was no greater evil. It was like Numata-san and I both understood Higanbana's laughter at the same time, and slowly, we inched towards one another. As Higanbana said, for Numata-san to return to hell must be a horrifying, cruel thing. Her body, that pitiful state, it gave a graphic detail of the terrors of that hell. If she kills me, Higanbana promised she wouldn't have to go back to that hell. Even so, the fact that I was the ringleader who drove her to suicide probably made her want to kill me 10 billion times more. It was the same for me, however. She had falsely accused me, and I had tasted a bitterness that couldn't lose to her rage and sadness from taking her own life. No, how can I say we felt the same pain? I just got yelled at by a teacher,
but she was bullied by the entire class. Her pain was completely different. The pain I felt just drove me to burn with rage, but it didn't lead me to taking my own life. But her pain couldn't be dissuaded. What if I'm wrong? Then what should I have done? Does that mean I should have just been content with crying myself to sleep at night because of those accusations?
No, that's not it at all. What goes around comes around. An eye for an eye, an evil for an evil. You merely had your just revenge. As a result, she merely chose to take her own life. Allowing their own deaths is the most terrible, wretched way humans can choose to admit defeat. So there's no need to feel sorry for her. You have the justifiable right to send that weakling who lacked the strength to continue living back to hell with your own hands.
I don't know what you're trying to say, Higanbana-san. Do you want to take revenge for Numata-san? Or do you want to make me kill her? It makes no sense.
Either is fine.
The hell do you mean by that? If you're killed, that's fine. And even if you counterattack and send that weakling corpse once again back to Hades, that's fun too. Either is fine. It's amusing, you see. It's quite boring, you know, being a school yokai, that is. So I find pitting students against each other makes me the happiest. I love bullying and fighting, you see. Just by watching you two glare at each other like that is so exciting. So exciting, I get goosebumps all over. Do you know what that feels like, I wonder?
Well, kill each other, you two. I don't care who wins. Bully and be bullied. Ah, what a pleasant school life.
Numata-san pained to speak. Now I no longer felt fear towards her miserable body. I only felt pity. What? Why did you do so many horrible things? Because you did it to me first! That day in the science prep room, you knocked over that anatomy dummy, didn't you? You should know. Even then you lied.
Yes, I lied, but taking your revenge so far, did I really do such a bad thing?
Her expression showed no anger, just pitiable sorrow, and I must have had the same expression. It was like she was saying, I really had my share of pain, but it wasn't enough that I wanted her to kill herself. I would have been satisfied with just getting even. However, those breaks didn't work, and before I knew it, it escalated out of control. My revenge grew far beyond my initial framing. Perhaps if I had made it just a revenge, even if I had been allowed just the right amount of revenge, what I did went beyond that. There was no excuse for it. No words to escape my sin. Perhaps I was wrong. I certainly hated you. You were probably aware that I hated you. But even so, I didn't intend to kill you. I didn't intend to have my revenge until you died or anything like that. After I thought it was enough, I would have stopped then, that's all. But I got caught up in the atmosphere of the class, and it escalated out of control.
That's right. There's even a limit to how much you can persistently stalk someone around after taking revenge for being falsely accused, apparently. Sure, isn't your crime obvious by now? You went too far. You drove her to die. Nonomiya-kun killed Yoko Numata.
Higanbana's cackles of wicked laughter challenged me to respond. However, it seemed she had a point, so I said nothing in return. Then, Numata-san faced Higanbana and spoke. Even so, if I didn't do what I did, Nonomiya-kun wouldn't have done it. In the end, I can't say he's wrong.
Then in the end, do you think you're paying for your own mistakes? Then in the end, do you think that being trapped for eternity in that freezing hell suits you? Do you want to go back to that hell once again, I wonder?
Numata-san shivered as she wrapped herself with both her arms. It might have been in fear, or it might have been just from the memory of the cold coming back to her. I couldn't tell. The only thing I could tell was her own terror of being dropped into hell. We both know we each equally have our sins. Numata-san has the crime of framing me, and I have the crime of driving her to death. That's not true. If I hadn't lied. Yeah, we're both bad people. Since there are hells for bad people like us, then we should both fall into them. But you've frozen in that hell long enough, so this time it's my turn to fall. Because Numata-san, right here, you deserve to have your revenge on me right now. Nonomiya-kun. We were probably at a distance closer than the best of friends. We were close enough so we could each embrace one another. Or we could each strangle one another. Higanbana was egging us on to strangle each other. But we did not. It must have been terribly boring for her. Higanbana made fools of us and ridiculed us. So if we each do nothing like this, Numata-san's time on this earth will run out, and then she'll plummet back to burn in hell. I realize the signs that her body's power is beginning to dissipate. At this rate, if she doesn't take her revenge, then she'll forever lose her chance. At that moment, I had the advantage and she was afraid. By standing still and appealing to what emotions she has within her, I could safely remain alive. Because of that, I couldn't allow myself to remain silent. I had to speak. If I thought without the aid of some school yokai mischief we wouldn't be able to meet again. We wouldn't have a chance to negotiate like this. I couldn't let a miracle pass me by. Numata-san, I'm sorry. What I did to you was painful, however. It was all because I did such devious things to get even. If my memory of you hadn't been erased, I think I would have certainly lived to regret it. But my memory was erased, and so until today I've lived a peaceful life. Being able to remember, I wanted to thank you for this opportunity. So I'll say it again. Numata-san, I'm truly sorry. Nanomiya-kun. Me too. I'm sorry. I got swept up in the mood and did that. I didn't think what I did would hurt you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm the one who's wrong. I'm sorry, truly sorry. I killed you, so you have the right to kill me. So kill me! There's no need for you to go to hell alone. Nanomiya-kun, you didn't kill anyone, you see? After all, I died because my heart wasn't strong enough. Before dying, there was probably a lot of alternatives, such as turning to someone for help, all kinds of things. Even though you were in pain, Nanomiya-kun, you didn't think of suicide. Choosing to die, knowing the depth and sadness of your sin, after you die, you realize it. Even so, I'm responsible for driving you to suicide. It's my fault! As if she were about to vomit thinking we were putting on a farce, Higanbana clicked her tongue.
You guys, what did I say earlier? Nanomiya-kun, Yoko, why won't you curse each other? Bully and be bullied. Either do or don't, bully or be bullied. Those are the laws of school, aren't they? So why are you apologizing to one another? Sure, it's kind of funny, but it's boring.
Higanbana-san, I am satisfied. I will return to hell like this. Numata-san.
Are you really alright with that, Yoko? After returning to this world and once again coming to remember the warmth of the sunlight, why are you saying you want to go back to that hell, I wonder? Please stop pretending. Look, it's almost time. If you quickly strangle Nanomiya-kun's neck, I'll prevent you from lapsing back into that hell.
I'm fine with this. I framed him. Nanomiya-kun took his revenge. And when I take revenge for that, Nanomiya-kun will take revenge on me again? I want it to end. We didn't come to school to bully and be bullied. I might have caused Nanomiya more trouble as a result, but that day running around the science room, all my friends were enjoying themselves and I truly had fun. Studying, playing, making friends. That's why That's why we came to school. It wasn't to deceive each other or hurt each other. Hurting and hurting back. If it makes a chain like that, then please let it end with me. Headmaster, take me away from everyone's memories. Please, please, let me rest. Too bad, Higanbana-kun. It seems that revenge isn't the honey needed to stir the dead from their sleep.
Oh, Headmaster, when did you arrive?
The headmaster was in the room before anyone noticed, and he gently placed his hand on Numata-san's shoulder. You will return to hell, and you will be forgotten by everyone. In exchange, I'll put everything to rest as you forget even the chill of your shivers.
Yes. Please. If everyone forgets and rests easy, the chain of hate will end.
She was already pained just by standing up by herself. Something might have been preventing her from falling to her knees. I realized that while she stood, at the same time she was losing her power to remain in this world. Numata-san, please forgive me.
If you will forgive me.
I forgive you. For what you did that day, I forgive you. So please, somehow, please forgive me.
Yes, thank you. Now, without any regrets, I can say goodbye. Thank you, Higanbana-san.
Thank you? Why are you thanking me?
I might have been brought back to foolishly take my revenge, but thanks to you, I was able to apologize to Nonomiya-kun.
And I was also able to apologize to Numata-san.
What is that? How boring. How dull, how stupid.
This was the first time I had seen Higanbana so upset, and she was even thrashing her elegant hair around in anger. Well, Numata-kun, it's about time to say your goodbyes. The headmaster gently informed her that her time was at an end. Those words were truly spoken in compassion, because at the very end of it all, he was giving her the chance to do something. With that last chance, Numata-san spent it stretching out her right hand to me. Numata-san,
Nonomiya-kun, let's shake hands.
Oh, all right. I firmly grasped her snow-white and ice-cold hand. Perhaps I was too strong, or perhaps my hand was too warm. But after her expression showed a moment of pain, in the end she showed me a smiling face. Why did I have to go and tell such a lie, I wonder? I was a fool. Maybe I wanted to see what you would do. Even though I just wanted a little conflict, I caused this much pain. I was truly a fool. I'm sorry. Thank you. And goodbye. And those were the last 3 things that Numata-san left behind. The headmaster finally adjusted his top hat that hung over his brow and cleared his throat. Well then, if you'll excuse me, I have to clean up Higanbana-kun's mischief. However, Nonomiya-kun, you alone will have your memory spared. Or would you rather I erase those memories again, perhaps? No. Our crimes are the same, so we should be allowed the same. To prove it, I'll never forget her as long as I live. I'll make sure the same mistakes aren't made again. Very well. Then I'll excuse myself. The headmaster also disintegrated into the air with a hiss. After that, Higanbana and I were all who remained. I could tell Higanbana couldn't hide how upset she was at this unimaginable development.
How dull. How lame. Lame, 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 lame! Why did it have to turn out like this? Oh, how uninteresting. How dull. Congratulations on staying alive, Nonomiya-kun. How does it feel to complete your revenge uninjured, I wonder?
There was no revenge or anything of the sort. We both forgave each other. That's all. Higanbana-san, while you're enjoying your tea in my house, you should show a little respect. Oh my. Do you intend to suggest I'm going to remain idle?
Oh, we're not done yet, not just yet. Do you suggest that I, The dancing Higanbana of the third-ranked seat of the school yokai, who has let you have this much of her time, isn't going to do any harvesting? Are you kidding me? Could I please ask you to cease underestimating? I wonder. Nonomiya-kun?
With her back to the window, Higanbana was infected with the violet darkness of the night, and aside from the bright red lights glaring from her eyes, everything else turned pitch black. I could hear the room creak and bend with her rage. Well, it's over. I'm probably going to be killed in this place. But I don't care. I'll rest alongside Numata-san in that freezing hell. I won't leave her to face that hell all by herself.
You might be quite a tricky human. What a fool to speak so lightly of hell. You don't even know the fear of that world of solitude. No one will come to greet you there, you see. People you don't know will come to play when they want and leave when they want, but they'll never come to play with you again. I was all alone in that cold, lonely infirmary. Saying that kind of hell isn't scary at all. You're quite an entertaining individual, Nonomiya-kun. It's totally different than the person you're expecting. But I've got a different idea. Like I said, you're truly amusing. Yoko was unappealing, yeah? I'll make you my doll. And if you want to spend eternity for whenever I feel like playing with you, then I can send you into eternal darkness where you can wait in vain.
There was an explosive crash as the glass window behind Higanbana's back burst to pieces. Those sharpened fragments turned into transparent knives and went directly for my throat. I had a feeling they were going to pierce into me, and I would die. At the same time, a strong force pulled me down from the nape of my neck from behind. If that hadn't happened, those glass fragments would have probably completely cut me to bits. Who grabbed my shirt? As I turned around, even though it was the first time I met her, somehow I was surprised that I knew her face.
Why, isn't it Marie? How crude of you to barge in on someone else's manhunt. What? You look mad. Your face looks like it's going to ruin that cute smile of yours for at least a week, you know?
Higanbana-san, both problems have been resolved. This isn't the time for us yokai to intervene.
Both problems? Who started the sinning? The chicken or the egg? The cycle of hatred can't be stopped. Bullying leads to more bullying, and the school of upperclassmen who bully underclassmen will inherit sadness for eternity. Just what are you suggesting two people in that cycle exchanging a strange farewell with strange expressions are going to accomplish anyway? Oh, hilarious.
I was grateful at first. I was grateful that you let me absolve my feelings that couldn't be erased by death alone. And yet, maybe that was my mistake. You just toy with the feelings of the dead with your cruel laughter for fun. Numata-san showed me her strength and I understood, because now I respect her from my heart, and I even remember her rage from what you did to her.
Marie, you can make that expression too, can't you? Ah, you're so adorable, you know? Maybe that's saying there was some value in inviting you to become the school yokai of the 8th rank. Didn't you say you were going to entertain me? Are you saying you're going to oppose me?
The dancing Higanbana?
Are you saying you're going to try and protect that fragile human from me?
Shielding me, Moriya-san stood in front of the Higanbana, who had a wicked smile on her face. That was very brave. Unfortunately, it looked as if an unstoppable foe stood before her. Moriya-san, I'm sorry. About your mother. It's all right. The headmaster wiped my mother's memories again. It's fine now. When I brought back the memories that you existed, with that mysterious camera, I sought after the truth, and I thought I was doing the right thing. But was it the right thing? I don't know. Nonomiya-kun, being forgotten is a terribly cruel thing, and I have compassion for all things equally. I think that with that power, I could destroy that chain of hatred in this world. I might linger here in this detestable body like this, but I should have been forgotten too. That's what I think now. Higanbana cast her laughter at that notion.
What? What? Are you saying that child who was strangled to death by Kanamori and tossed in a tub of feces shouldn't have had her revenge or anything of the sort, but rather should have meekly given up? Are you really that kind of intolerable, simplistic, dull child, I wonder?
Yes. We gave up meekly when we took the sweet talk of a sneering demon. We must not spread our hatred. We must not let it be passed on. We soon forgot those emotions. We have to satisfy ourselves with other fun and more rewarding emotions. I had forgotten. Yet even so, there's still something I can do.
And what is that, I wonder?
You, with your sneering and toying with the misfortune of others. I can stop you with your own kind of violence.
Well then, come dance with me, Marie. I've been bored because you haven't played with me lately. I mean, if you would come play with me more often, then maybe I would finally stop these boring hunts. This is your fault.
The room shook, creaked, cracked, and broke into countless blades that sought to pierce Marie. It was a whirlwind of vicious blades, a storm almost like a tornado. That spiral whirled around with Higanbana at its center. Marie violently warded it off with both her arms. Even though she appeared a delicate girl, for just a moment when she threw up her arms, they became as thick as tree trunks, and she looked like a ferocious monster. However, she held up against countless malicious attacks from Higanbana. Her arms were pierced and slashed countless times. Her fresh blood splattered across the room. Moria-san! You're bleeding! I'm fine. More importantly, I'll make room for you. Please run to the hallway. Higanbana, who had completely broken the room in sharpened fragments, seemed to be dancing a waltz in the middle of the room. With that grace, that must be why she called herself the Dancing Higanbana. But could I escape into the hallway and from that brutal waltz of death? But now was no time to argue. All I could do was nod in agreement. Her whirlwind picked up the pile of photos and crumpled them like leaves into bits. That might be for the best. I don't need to leave anything behind. I should lose those memories of the past one by one and make a new future for myself. Now, to the hallway! Prepared to risk her life, Marie jumped into Higanbana's waltz. Taking that as his cue, Nonomiya ran out the room. Wah! That's fine with me. Live a long life. You mustn't waste the life that Yoko-san couldn't even snatch away from you.
Isn't it a bit soon for you to be my dance partner, Marie?
The storm that swirled around Higanbana's waltz seized Marie. Her body was swallowed by the wind and swirled around like a leaf, and she was blown into the hallway where Nonomiya fled and into his back. Tangling together, they both rolled down the hallway.
Since you're like that, you're always going to be 8th rank, right, Marie? If you're not a little more refined, a bit more elegant, and completely ruthless, how do you intend to make it in the high society of the night? If that's all you have, I'll get bored. If I can't at least tear out Nonomiya-kun's liver, I'll die of boredom. Hey, I know. I'll even split it with you if you want. So end his life with your hand, my good friend Marie-chan. No thanks. But if you would politely withdraw, in exchange, I'll be sure to come play with you in your infirmary. Don't toy with me. You think something like that will suffice for intruding on my hunt? I'll even serve tea. The night duty room has some delicious rice cakes. Let's eat them together. Tea? Rice cake? Oh, that would be a splendid evening tea party. But don't you think we should toast with his red blood in our cups? Looks like he broke a leg. It's time to pay the piper. Marie Nonomiya-kun! Jeez, why won't you ever listen to me, Higanbana-san? Door! Shut yourself! When Marie ordered it, the door between the room and the hallway shut with great force. After seeing that and spacing out for a moment, Higanbana rolled on the floor in laughter. What? You think a single thin door will stop me, the dancing Higanbana of the 3rd rank seat of the school yokai, from feeding on my prey? Yes,
Mezo-Mezo-san, Marie, the 8th rank of the school yokai, will stop you from feeding. Even though you're a yokai, you're siding with a human? Even though if you don't feed on souls, you'll dry and shrivel up? I'll smash this flimsy door to bits for you. No, you cannot open this door. Door, listen to me. Mezo-Mezo, Mezo-Mezo, you there. Won't you listen to my pitiful story? Mezo-Mezo, Mezo-Mezo, you there. Won't you listen to my pitiful story? Taking the meaning of those words, the door grew thicker, heavier, and heavier, imbued with red light. That's right. I know those words. Recently, there's been a new story going around about the 8th school yokai. It's said that each night in the former school building bathroom stall, a yokai called Mezo-Mezo-san appears. That's how that yokai invites people inside the stall. According to the rules in that story, you must not respond to that question, and you must not open the door. If you open it, the terrifying Mezo-Mezo-san will kill you by crushing every bone in your body. If you're afraid of Mezo-Mezo-san, then you can't open that door. Because if you dare open that door, the horrifying Mezo-Mezo-san will crush your bones. The Mezo-Mezo-san from those ghost stories, the Mezo-Mezo-san herself was leisurely addressing Higanbana, who was just beyond the doorway. Even though she was directly under the lights in that thin hallway, Marie's body began blotting out everything with a deep black shadow. Looking at that shadow, one would surely think it was the same Marie from moments ago, but she was completely different. She looked like a real school yokai would. Her form was as terrifying as it was repulsive. On the other side of the door, Higanbana was being held back by a solitary doorway, and with a twisted smile on her face, she reached with a hand for the doorknob. As she was about to touch the knob, she hesitated right before it met her hand. What is this? Can it be that this dancing Higanbana is afraid of Mezo-Mezo-san? If not, then open the door, please. I'll face you with my true form. Marie. She can't open it. She can't open the door. No matter how many Higanbanas there are, it wouldn't be enough. If she opens the door, Mezo-Mezo-san will crush every bone in her body. That's the Mezo-Mezo story. So she can't open it. Even the dancing Higanbana gives pause to that terrifying Mezo-Mezo-san that lies just beyond the doorway. If you didn't do that, then I couldn't call you my friend, Marie. You're wonderful. Truly wonderful. Oh, what real fun this is. I wonder why this doesn't happen at school. Why doesn't this happen in classrooms or the infirmary, I wonder? This enclosed atmosphere just doesn't work. I wonder why we have to play in such a confined place, you know? Higanbana-san, you're talking to me. You're breaking the rules of Mezo-Mezo-san. According to the rules of the Mezo-Mezo-san story, engaging in conversation with her is forbidden. Since Higanbana was speaking with her like that, she's already being pulled into Mezo-Mezo-san's horror story. The way Marie's shadow was already affecting her was strange. That grotesque shadow had Marie's voice, but even Nonomiya began to forget ever so slightly that the figure standing before his very eyes was actually Marie. Higanbana-san, if you like to play such risky games, I'll play with you. Please open this door. Well, if it isn't the ordinary Marie Moria, this true power of Mezo-Mezo-sans who earned the 8th rank and everyone who was too scared to steal it away from her. I want to see it. It gives me chills. I'm glad you're my friend. I'm truly glad that you offered to be my friend. I am too, and you're a friend I treasure, Higanbana-san. So let's play at school again. You're right. This confined space is too doom and gloom. If you'll come play with me once in a while, I want to play in a much, much more wonderful place and do something splendid with you. Being so limited in a place like this seems silly to me. Let's go home. School yokai belong at school.
Sure, fine with me. Let's do it. I knew you were my only friend.
Higanbana's laughter and her windstorm waltz gradually grew distant. Finally, it could no longer be heard, and the night's silence took hold. When I realized it, Marie had returned to her original form like the Marie Moria in the photograph. It's all right now. Higanbana-san went back to school. She's a fickle one, but I don't think she'll come out to bother you anymore. I had been lying on the floor. Carefully, nervously, I opened the door to my room. When I did, I couldn't believe it. The room was silent, or rather it was clean, as if nothing had happened. Even though everything had been destroyed by that raging tornado, there was no trace of it at all, as if Higanbana and the like had never been in there from the beginning. Although the mug and cushion I had put out for Higanbana, those were still there. Well then, I'll also be heading back now. I'm a school yokai now, after all. Leaving the school in itself is really tiring. Thank you very much.
Thanks should be for Yoko-san, who showed her courage to end that cycle of hatred. And thanks to you as well for showing the courage to forgive Yoko-san. You might not have been able to show it to her while she was alive, but even so, you weren't too late. After all, even though you were both on the border of life and death, you both were able to forgive each other. Moria-san said with a fatigued smile. It might have been fine to end it there, but I had to ask. That's right. About this camera. I'm taking it back. I decided to give Moria-san that mysterious camera that started everything. When I did, she had a troubled expression on her face. I'm sorry. That's not really mine, and I don't know what I'd really do with it. Higanbana-san knows the details, but she's in a bad mood right now, so I don't really want to ask. So I should just get rid of it then? Because there's only one shot's worth of film left on here. I'll ask the headmaster what we should do, because this camera is causing him trouble. So I think he would surely tell us what to do. Please do. I won't use that camera anymore, no matter what. I don't want to wake the dead if they're sleeping peacefully. Numata-san is now trapped in that freezing cold hell for eternity, and so that I don't cause her any more suffering. I think she's fine now. Are you sure? Yeah. At first she was just like you, and all that she thought about might have been the fury of revenge that set her soul on fire. But since you both forgave each other, perhaps she was able to achieve peace of mind. I think she has to be resting in peace now. Well, it would be great if that's true, but... No, it's not just my opinion. She has achieved peace. Since I'm a yokai, I know it to be true. Having her mind revived in that despicable form, could Numata-san really be at peace, I wonder? I wanted some kind of proof that now she wasn't being tortured anymore after being freed from that cycle of hatred. And then Marie clapped her hands. That's right! You said that camera still has one shot of film left, right? If we use it, I don't think it can be used for any strange mischief after that. Oh, I see. But what do we shoot? Go to the bathroom and please take a picture of your own reflection. It's all right. There's nothing to be afraid of anymore. And I'm sure even now she wants you to do it too. At that moment, I could hear someone chattering away outside the doorway. Mom had finally come home. Well, I'll be going. We probably won't meet again, and you'll probably forget about me, but we'll always be by your side. Maybe even quietly sitting right next to you. Well then, goodbye! Takeshi, are you home? Sorry for being late. I turned around to give my reply to my mom downstairs. Then I turned back towards Moria-san, but she had already disappeared. When she left, she told me to take a picture of myself in the bathroom. No matter how you put it, taking a picture of myself with that mysterious camera was unsettling. However, Marie had said to do that, and I couldn't feel any malice from her. Didn't she say that she was wanting me to do that too? Did she? I went to the bathroom. I brought that camera with me. Then, in the dimly lit bathroom, I looked down the scope at my reflection in the mirror. I was a bit scared, but I took the picture with the click of the shutter. Flash. Making its mechanical noise, the final photograph developed right there. But I wasn't the only one caught on the photograph.
Yoko Numata's figure was also there, but she didn't appear hideous or gory. With her usual smile on her face, her normal clothes, she looked just like she did when she was running around the science prep room. I had used up all the film, and I've ended the uses of this eerie camera. No one knew her name. Even so, all that was left on that photograph of the bathroom mirror was a happily smiling girl next to me.
The tea you made for me is really quite tasty, Marie. This might be the work of a tea ceremony yokai.
Does that mean I have to snip the tail off a raccoon and put it in the kettle? A yokai tail like that would be good once in a while, don't you think? The moon's pure white light shined down on the infirmary of eternal night. The shadows of 2 yokai sat within. As they sat like friends atop a white bed in the infirmary, they drank tea and ate rice cakes. Getting to live in the infirmary, I envy you. I have to live in the bathroom. That disgusting old building's bathroom. It's because we don't choose where we die. Well, I think it suits Airhead Marie, though. If you're going to say such rude things, I won't come over anymore, you know. I'm kidding, it's a joke. You're the only one who comes to play. After all, a doll that no one plays with is just a figurine. As she took a bean paste bun in her mouth, Higanbana hung her head. I thought this incident was truly typical of you, Higanbana-san. What do you mean? Although you tricked me in a really, really roundabout way, in the end, I think everything turned out just as you wanted it. And I thought, why can't she just be more straightforward? But I realized that was just your way of doing things. What are you talking about? You're making fun of me, aren't you? I'll leave. I think you're a bit cute when you put it like that. Cute? This dancing Higanbana? Are you saying that the dancing Higanbana school yokai of the 3rd rank, for whom there is no equal in cruelty, inhumanity, and brutality, is cute? Sorry, but I'm not that kind of girl.
Well then, who should we play with next? Which child should we toy with, I wonder?
Jeez, I'll be the one who plays with you. Let's not meddle with any of the students. It seems this Higanbana can't even keep Simple Marie as her pet.
I am the dancing Higanbana, master of the infirmary. So then who will I curse and cast a spell on next, I wonder? I wonder who I'll imprison in this infirmary. While I think about that, perhaps I'll gaze at the clock that spins for eternity, never once receiving the rays of dawn. Then again, maybe I'll give myself a little break from hunting. Instead, I'll have these rice cakes. Tomorrow I'd like some rice crackers. You simply must bring me some. I'll wait for you.